Okay, so you have just stepped out of the gates of Illuminas and said goodbye to Thranduil. About an hour has passed. When we last met, you had said goodbye to both Nar and Cyrion and Gandalf at the very top of Illuminas, the Tower of Elendil. You had sent them on their way, and you had rested somewhat, and you were about to go off on your trip, your journey to the Blue Mountains, when Thranduil said you should wait for an hour for someone to appear. And that hour went by, I guess a little uncomfortably. You were just standing outside the gates, waiting for an uncertain appearance. There was a little bit of drizzle, but then you saw coming towards you this figure, accompanied by a dog, a hound, large dog, a wolfhound. And that figure would approach, cowled and cloaked from the rain, bristling with armaments, and make his way to you. Who is that figure?
As the figure approaches and becomes more in view, as was said, he's heavily cowled, a mask covering his features, though his eyes are visible as they move over the group. The large hound paces behind him. When he stops a short distance away, it immediately sits down, briefly glancing to his mask before its gaze also moves over the group, studying them, uncertain if they're a friend or foe. After a moment of silence, he'll close the distance. You see that he wears a bow on his back. It's obviously of elven make. He has a broadsword scabbarded on his hip. At first glance, he's wearing what appears to be dark leather armor, but as he closes that distance, you actually see feathers adorning the material, like the color of ravens. And after a moment, he speaks. I'm called the Hunter. Are you the Heralds?
Varoth looks over his shoulder back at his companions, and he looks at this individual. When you say he has a mask, Dennis, do you mean it just covers the lower half of his face like the image, or is it all of his face?
No, like the image. You can see, his eyes and above, yeah.
So he makes eye contact with this individual, and he says, "We are."
I have heard that you have need. I would travel with you.
You would hear Bord's voice come from behind the group. He is who he says he is. And we can trust him. And you would catch the eyes of Bord, who is not of west of the Misty Mountains. You wouldn't see many Bjornings this side, but you have seen him before on his journey west to here.
Farrell looks over to Cynric and Beregond.
Just the Hunter? Or have you a name?
His features are covered except for his eyes, as I said, but you can see the slight smile in the corners of his eyes, the rest hidden. I do. But those of the shadow would rejoice on the hearing of it, and I have those that I wish to protect. You may call me the Hunter. And this is Cain, and he'll reach down and pet the large dog at his side.
Beregond is staying back a little, eyeing Cain warily, and he just nods and says, "Welcome." That's all. And but he doesn't take his eyes off Cain. And Cain, probably dogs can sort of sense fear, and it sort of sets them up. So Kane, probably his hackles rise a bit, and the dog's growling a bit at Beregond.
Yeah, the dog will give a soft growl. For a moment, you'll see the hunter, his gaze snapping behind him if he's expecting something, a threat of some sort. And then he'll turn forward, tracking the dog's gaze, and he'll make a soft tick with his tongue, and the dog will be silenced.
Faroth looks down, or rather, it doesn't have to look that far down because I'm guessing this Irish wolfhound, this huge dog, is pretty tall at the shoulder. So he looks down at this beast, and he sort of crouches and looks at it, sort of at its eye level, looks at it for a second, then stands and looks towards the hunter, and he says, "It took me a while to come to terms with what Thranduil was suggesting. Sending those he trusted with us, the Heralds, on our plight." And he looks over, a sideways glance towards Bord. "I have learned that it is wise to accept help when it is offered." And then he looks over to Cynric, remembering his words from the other evening. "Glad to have you, Hunter."
I'm not at that. So where does our journey take us?
Northwest, I believe. I haven't got the map open quite yet. Farrell scrambles
To
for
the
his
Blue Mountains.
That was like a left or right, Gandalf.
No, I know, yeah. I knew it's Blue Mountains, but I don't know from our position where it is. Northwest, I think.
Yeah, west-northwest.
West-northwest. And I relay that to the hunter. The Blue Mountains.
If you wish to fight the shadow, you've come to the right place. We seem to attract more than our fair share of attention.
See, we already have something in common.
There are a lot of questions that run through Farrell's mind regarding this stranger. There's a lot of questions that run through his mind about Bord as well that he just has not had the time to ask about. So instead, he makes a mental note of all of these questions and he stores them in the back of his mind. He says, "We must move whilst we have light. The days grow darker. We must keep pace. Let us go."
So it's grey, as it always is in this part of the world, it seems, when summer's at its end, winter begins approaching, sort of overcast, a little bit of drizzle as you make your way around the city and around the lake, Lake Evandeem or Nanuial. This huge lake next to Anuminas, where the Great Port is and things like that. But you can make your way around that, kind of slow going. Moving at the pace that you're accustomed to. You're not in a huge hurry. You're not fleeing anything, nor you're rushing to get anywhere. And so you set a quiet pace and you begin your journey westwards. As I say, it's raining, as it is most days. And so hoods are pulled up, cloaks pulled tight, as most of you ride, I think. You would have been given horses. I don't know if you would take them, all of you, but certainly the offer is there from Anuminas.
Would the steeds that we took to Foremost have ever returned, Lloyd? Because that's not something we never established. Are they gone? They have not. Fair enough.
I mean, whether they will or not is a different question, but they haven't this far.
Okay. Well, if we were given horses, I would have gladly taken them. If not, then I don't mind being on foot.
Yep, so you'd have been given horses and a spare one for the hunter. And you can kind of ride at a lazy pace around the lake, looking at the wonderful sights. The big hills that rise up behind the lake and the sort of placid very still surface of the lake with the drops of rain as you make your way westwards. There's a day or two of this as you ride in that direction. These lands are fairly safe. They're heavily patrolled by Dunedain around Inimanas. And so you can make camp each night, maybe in a copse of trees or against the back of a hill or something like that, and get some good rest. But on that second night, you would hear, as you're kind of like tucking yourselves in and getting ready and someone is staying on watch, you can start to hear this like music very softly. You've camped at the top of a sort of hill that looks down onto a valley, and over the other side, as you kind of like peer over, you can see that there are about 20 figures moving in a sort of slow caravan. There's a sort of glow coming off them and this soft music, and you can see that they are elves. You are on the path, roughly speaking, towards the Grey Havens. If you were to go south from where you were, you would get there eventually, and you can see that these elves are kind of like walking and singing slowly in that direction.
Faroth is gonna stand. He's slightly illuminated, backlit by the fire that's been made for the camp. And he calls out in Elven, Hurin Adada. Where does your journey, how does your journey fare, is what he's saying in Elven.
So two or three of them will like look up in your direction and break away from the caravan and step a little bit closer. And one of them will say, fine. Just fine.
I see you are undertaking a pilgrimage.
We're heading into the west.
I see. Would you like to share our fire? It is cold these nights.
And there's like a raised eyebrow, like he wasn't expecting these kind of manners from a man. I will check with my master.
Very well. And as Farrell turns to walk back to his friends, you can see, if you were looking at his face, you would see the mannerisms, the politeness drop from his face as his back's turned. Farrell wants information, and he knows how to get it when needs be. And he walks over to Bord. And he just gives him a nod as he sits down by the fire.
Bord nods back and then wonders what you just said to each other.
There's a moment goes by before this same elf appears, and he says, we will spend some time with you. And he kind of like comes up and he like checks out the camp, and you can see his like elven eyes scanning every inch of it and every face, every weapon, taking it all in before he like would take a seat. And you see the others kind of like slowly move up the hill. Most of them are walking. One of them rides a white horse. This beautiful elven woman. And she steps down off the horse in a movement that is impossible for a person to do. Just this like fluid, almost like she flows from the horse onto the ground. And there's like a soft sort of like squelch as the muck. You can see some of the muck like splash onto her perfectly white garments. And she like looks down at the ground for a moment and then up and then kind of smiles. The elves are quick to like break out their own sort of like camp stuff and get to work. And the first thing they do is set up a shelter for this woman, and she sits into a sort of chair that they've made for her or like brought out for her. The second it's put down, she sits, and she sits sort of straight back, looking out over the camp. Generous of you to share your fire.
There isn't much generosity to go around this far north. We must savor it whilst we can.
Indeed. What is your name?
My name is Faroth, son of Fardred, and he looks to his friends for them to introduce themselves.
Son of Fardred?
Yes.
Fardred of Animanas?
The very one.
I see.
Ford's hand slowly moves and is now touching his axe at the question.
I think of all of you, Baragon would be the one to notice the several elven eyes that just kind of like almost imperceptibly look in that direction for a moment.
Beragond has, every time they break camp, he's been trying to make friends with Cain, but failing each time. He's, again, he's trying to offer the dog some bone or some meat, and the dog's refusing to take it from his hand. And he looks up and says, "I am Beragond. I'm Beragond of Minas Ithil, of the stewards of Minas Ithil of old." He turns his head slightly to the left. Am I correct in recognizing the accent of Rivendell?
Perceptive, Baragon of Minithizil. You are. I am Hiriath, she says, as if that's supposed to mean something. It's clear that it does to everyone with her, but perhaps not to you. The journey has been mostly pleasant.
Snoke finishes fussing with something on Ciaro, some belt loop, or perhaps the faceplate she now wears. I'm Cyneric. Is your fight over, Elf Maiden?
She smiles at Maiden. Yes. We are... It is time for us to go. This is a world of men now.
Faroth looks into the fire and almost starts questioning himself in his own mind. Is this a conversation that they want to have right now? Who should be staying? Who should be going? Whose world this really is? And he can't stop himself. He tries because he doesn't want to cause trouble, but he says, "The world will belong to naught but the shadow if all shall abandon it."
And there's like, on one perfect corner of her perfect lips, the hint of a smile. We have protected this Middle Earth for a long time. I have protected it for a long time. It is your turn.
I was not aware that oaths take turns.
You are every inch of your father, Faroth.
Ooh. Faroth,
Unaware
go ahead.
of the consequences or what was really being said there, but sensing a shift in Faroth from his place on the edge of light and shadows, the hunter takes a step forward and says, "I am the hunter of Mirkwood." And he gives a slight nod of his head to the large wolfhound and says, "My companion is Cain."
There are many hunters in Mirkwood, from what I hear, she says. And she like extends her hand a little bit, and Cain like comes up very politely and quietly, and she like scratches under his chin, and he sits.
You hear Beragon swearing.
It is a strange custom that you have, Farath, to invite us here to your fire and then question our motives in going into the West. It is what my people do, what we must do.
Farath is still stinging from the comment, but regardless, he maintains his composure barely, and he says, "Forgive me. It is a habit of mine wanting to discuss, debate, to ensure that all actions are the right ones. I meant no offense."
If you say so, Farath. Not all of our people are going into the West, but some, yes. Others remain even now in Imladris and Mirkwood and Linden.
And what word is there from Rivendell?
Little changes in Rivendell. It is why our people stay there. There has been discussion. Your visit has not gone unnoticed, and Lord Elrond has been speaking on your behalf. But I can't say that most in Imladris live there because it is a quiet place, a hidden place, where they need not go to war.
Yes. We travel to the Blue Mountains. How fares the road? Do you know anything from beyond this point? Anything that a group of travelers like us should know about?
Well, we have come from the east, not from the west. We do not know. I do not know. What happens in those Blue Mountains is those are affairs of dwarves. They rarely show themselves.
I see. Is there any kind of elven population beyond this point as well, or is that it? You know,
So
there's no elven.
There's Linden, which is kind of near the Grey Havens. And supposedly, although I don't know how much you know about it, they're supposed to be on the far side of the Blue Mountains, other elves in Harlanden. But I don't know how well known that is.
That's fair. I don't think Farrell would know. That's fine. So he nods, a bit disappointed that they didn't have further information about the road ahead of them. And he sort of like notices there's a beat in the conversation where nothing is being said, and elves could sit in silence for days on end and not feel awkward at all. But Faroth has not such a constitution when it comes to conversation, and he looks sort of almost desperately to his friends to see if they have anything to say.
Cynric hasn't come to sit with the rest. He's gone back to fussing as they talk and trade barbs. But this time he does finish, and like with a quick tug, like the harness and things comes away, and Ciaro can graze happily. But he holds on to Nar's horse helm for a while, just running his thumb over it. And he comes and joins the circle and like nods bows kind of a little, as he's learned to do with Thranduil, before sitting cross-legged across from Hyria. I've often wondered, you elves have always had a place to go. This place may have been your home longer than many human lifetimes, but you, I imagine, and others always thought it was never really your home. Is there anything you could give from one race to another as you pass this mantle off to us to fight the shadow alone? Any gift, material, wisdom, or otherwise? Your presence will obviously be missed, but perhaps not all of your talents have to go with you.
Well, I cannot speak for all of my people. It's possible that someone will remain in Imladris, or in the halls of Thranduil, or in Linden, or places beyond. But it is time for my people to diminish and go into the west and leave this world to you. You are the inheritors. You're going to speak with dwarves, no? In the Blue Mountains?
That is our goal for now.
I would counsel that perhaps you do the talking rather than the son of Fardred. I would counsel you to think that dwarves are avaricious and miserly. They value gold and things. I would counsel you to remember that dwarves have long memories and longer grudges, and to speak as politely as you can, and to say what you mean. Those dwarves that I have met have little time to speak around a subject.
Cynric looks over to Beregond and his compliment from previous, that he speaks simply like men of the first folk, those who built relationships and alliances that lasted an age. And he kind of smiles and turns back to her. Wise words. Wise words indeed.
Bord would speak up at this moment. He would say, "Wisdom is knowing the consequences of your actions." And he would look up, and Bord loves small talk. He loves learning about all of you. This is what you would have learned on any journey so far that you've been with him. But he's eerily quiet here, and he looks to Hediath and says, "For how many lives of men have you walked this earth?"
That is a difficult question to answer.
It's less difficult for me.
This would
He
be
said-
my... And she's like thinking about it. You can see she's actually trying to remember.
As she does this math in her head, he says, "I see no coincidence in your leaving as soon as we need you the most."
She reaches out a hand to her right, and an attendant hands her this like crystal glass with some wine in it, and she like takes a sip.
And he turns a bright red that you can see underneath the paint, underneath the dirt, underneath the mar, underneath his beard.
I am not a warrior, Bjorning. I have made things in my time. Jewelry. I have looked over Imladris for nearly 2,000 years.
There's a flash in the firelight as something silver flies through the air towards the lady who, I presume being an elf, just instinctively catches it. And when she opens her hand, she sees a ring with the likeness of two serpents intertwined with the eyes made of green jewels. And this, the serpents meet beneath a crown of golden flowers that one serpent upheld and one devoured. And the green gems seem to burn with a fire. And Hiriath, sorry, Beregond asks Hiriath, you have lived a long time and you have made beautiful things. Do you recognize this?
This is a masterwork. She like holds it up in front of her eyes and she like looks at it. It's the ring of Barahir, no?
Proud are the words, and all their turn to see the jewels green that burned in Beren's ring. These gnomes had set as eyes of serpents twined that met beneath the gold crown of flowers that one upholds and one devours, the badge of Finrod made of Yor and Felagond, his son now bore. It is the ring of Barahir that it is the right and the birthright of Faroth here, but he has granted me to carry it to remind elves of the friendship that existed and was sworn those many years ago by Finrod Felagund to Barahir back in the dawns of time, or the dawn of our time anyway. It is a beautiful, beautiful thing, and I have seen many beautiful, beautiful things corrupted by the shadow here. And it is Faroth's choice what happens to the ring. It is his. But my love of beauty and my love of the crafts of Middle-earth and the things gone and of ages gone by, my heart would like it to travel with you to the west, to remind you, even as you go beyond the reach of us, remind you of the friendship that exists with men, so you never forget. But it is Faros to dispose with as he will.
Faroth looks around, his eyebrows raised at Beregond. And he looks back and he sees the ring of Barahir in the hands of the elf. And he rises and he stands up. And he says, "It is true, Beregond speaks correctly. Your Lord Elrond bade me to bear this ring, that when we would speak with elven kind, that we could remind them that there's always been a friendship between our kinds. And as you can see, I'm in need of diplomatic aids in our plight." And he sort of throws the elf a smile, a very, very sly smile from the corner of his mouth. He says, "But I agree. It is the elves that need reminding that men, while we can be flawed, we have courage and we have much to offer. And if all that can be gained from that is that you remember us in the West, then so be it. Take it."
So she's like looking at this ring. You can tell that she has like a jeweler's eye. She's looking at it very, very intensely, kind of like turning it over in her fingers and like examining every facet of the gem. You have a strange way about you. Strange that you speak of friendship and then provide nothing but cutting words, and then yet provide a princely gift the likes of which I would not have expected. It's a strange kind of friendship.
We like to keep people guessing.
That is not traditionally the way that I have understood friendships nor alliances to work.
You speak of allies as you leave Middle-earth.
And what would you have me do then, Bjorning? Stay here. I am a maker of jewels. What would I do here when the war comes?
Is it with those jewels that you so boastfully protected Middle-earth? As he refers to the earlier conversation. Is your artisanship all you have to offer? He catches himself at the end of that last sentence and almost trips over his words. He again becomes a bright red, and he's shown too much, and he looks to Faroth, who he's quickly, taking a respect to, and he feels kind of ashamed for this outburst. And despite his size, he looks very, very small in the firelight.
And Faroth, relating to this, having also shown his cards a little too early, he feels, looks to the elf and he says, "We do not mean to cause offense. It is not right for the last words that you exchange with those who will remain in Middle-earth to be those made in anger. What you are doing demands respect. I know enough of your kind to understand that. Indeed, you make or have made priceless jewels and artifacts, but have those things not been the cause of many a great change in this land for eons. And he doesn't say exactly which artifacts, but I'm sure the elf can guess."
She smiles at the what is ostensibly a compliment. And she looks at the ring and puts it into her right hand and then ding, flicks it back in your direction. It is a princely gift that you offer me, Faroth. It is too fine a gift. It is too important to this world. Men and elves have been friends for a long time. And this ring is an intrinsic symbol of that friendship, and it will be more useful to you here than as a reminder in Valinor. There is you need not fear that we could possibly forget men. Because I am certain that there will be men here in Middle-earth long after this shadow has been defeated. You have fire in you, all of you, and I can see that, and I can see that it has made you speak perhaps a little bit more barbedly than you would have wished. But that is the nature of men. It is your way to be loud and boorish and aggressive, perhaps. But these are not always negative qualities. The attendant on her right sees like a little upward motion of her chin and moves into one of the bags, begin looking for something. And she says, "This fire will be useful to you. I am going into the West, and there is nothing that you can say to sway me otherwise. I have lived a long life. I have earned this, and I am going. But there are other elves, perhaps, who do not wish to go yet, who are young and who still have much wonder to see in this world. And so I will tell you something that I should not tell you. If you cross the Blue Mountains, something that very few people do, for what is up there but snow and the ruined path to the west, if you go up there, there is a hidden city of my people. And if you go there, perhaps those elves would help you. I cannot speak for them, but it's possible." The attendant comes from the bag, and he brings this this necklace. It's almost glowing white, sort of silver, in his hand.
Baragon takes a breath in and stands up.
And he comes and he hands it to Hiriath, and she kind of like lets it dangle. And there's like at the center of it this sort of very complex, sort of swirling metallic pendant. This is something that you would not have. This is something that you would not be able to buy, nor is it something that, well, I think it would be beyond your ability to steal. And she says, she looks at Baragon just for a moment before looking back to you, Farah.
Baragon's hands go behind his back.
She says, "It is a gift, as your man from the Riddermark asked for. A true gift, not information, but something finer. If you present this to those elves, they might recognize you as a friend. An introduction."
Was she reaching forward to give this to Faroth, did you say, Lloyd?
Yes.
Faroth looks to it and turns and looks at Cynric and sort of motions to you.
Cynric kind of he'd been in the conversation, but perhaps staring at the fire, letting the words wash over him, and he kind of looks up, stretches out a little bit with a smile, and with a patience, perhaps the elves would respect. He walks past his friend, and putting a hand to his shoulder, and stands just slightly in front of him, to one side. See, I knew, even though you weren't a warrior, and even though the many people that you leave aren't warriors, we all have to do our part. We all have to fight it in a way. I did not begrudge you for leaving. I only asked you for a last help, last bit of aid. Thank you.
I too have a boon to ask, says Baragon, stepping forward. We have some delicate diplomatic negotiations coming up, and so to impress the dwarves, we must not put a foot wrong. Before, we have had many diplomatic meetings, and we have prepared and to look our best before them. An elf did my hair at one of them, and it was done better than my hair has ever been done before. I ask you the same boon, he says. I ask if an elf can again prepare my hair before our meeting with the dwarves, I say, and turn my back on them.
She actually lets out this like musical little laugh at the request. And And she like turns to look at the two elves on either side of her, and they're both kind of smiling. I suppose that is a boon that we can grant. And she calls Lunuriel, and one of her attendants comes forward. And he kind of like has this look on his face like, I have to touch a man's hair. It's going to be dirty and matted and awful. But he can't refuse the request of his mistress. And so he nods, and he like takes a comb, Beragond, from his pack, and he would sit down over the evening as you kind of like cook them food, and they kind of tell stories and sing songs and things like that. He would like set to doing the hair of anyone who wanted it done.
As the evening moved on, I assume Cain would probably be still near the woman, and at some point, the hunter would make his way over to her. He is a slight figure. I don't think I've mentioned that. He's only around 5 foot. He's very slight build. And he's rather young, though the way he carries himself is that of a seasoned warrior, and any that stare into his eyes will see experience as well beyond his age and what any should endure. And he'll kind of kneel down with Cain between them and absently pet the dog, and he'll say to her, "My lady, I also do not begrudge you for your journey. If I may, I would ask, when you reach the west, will you finally be out of reach of the shadow?"
It is said that Anatar's reach cannot go to Valinor. And there were times when that was not the case, when his master, well, once it was a place equally threatened. But we are almost certain that Anatar cannot reach to Valinor, and we will be free of the shadow and of darkness.
His gaze will turn down and remain silent for a moment, then rise up again, and he'll ask a bit of hesitation and tentative in his voice, and says, "Has there ever been a time then that someone other than an elf has traveled there?"
There have. Although I'm no expert, I believe it's possible. Special dispensations can be made, although that is not my decision to make. It would be the shipwright.
I imagine that it is not an easy thing to make such arrangements.
No, indeed. It would be so rare as to be almost unique.
Well, perhaps a chance, a dream of it, can give me strength in the coming days then.
Indeed.
And he'll lean closer and lower his voice so only that she can hear it. And he will give her his name, his real name, and then bow to her as he moves to join the others at the fire.
So the rest of the evening passes a little bit more pleasant than it had begun. Lenuriel sets to Beragond hair, and there are songs sung and fine elven food eaten, as well as whatever you have caught. Yeah, and you would rest in comfort and relative safety until the morning comes, and they would make their way away from you. And she would say, "I wish you luck on your journey, and I hope that the dwarves will be swayed. And I hope that you meet our cousins in Harlenden. Your age is coming, the age of men. And with the fire that you have, as long as it's tempered, I think it will be bright.
A lesson well learned this past night, says Fareth, and he gives a slight bow. Farewell on your voyage.
Cynric now adorned with the spiraling, shining elven necklace. Thank you for your light. I shall guide us all in dark places.
She inclines her head, and they begin on their journey away. And the song, the kind of mournful song, begins again as they make their way westward.
We still have a fair journey to go, and time is running out. Let us away.
And so you continue. Another day passes of travel in the sort of grim rain. It's not lashing rain, it's more of a drizzle that has a way of making every single part of you wet while not feeling soaked. It's fairly uncomfortable, but you're used to it in this part of the world as you ride another day. And on the fourth day of travel, you can hear a familiar noise, all of you. It's one that you haven't heard in a long time, not since you were in the mountains, and a noise that you first heard in Ithilien. It's the sound of an orcish horn. And looking around, you can see, as you kind of like rush to the top of a hill, that there are 3 men on horseback that are galloping. So if you're going west, they're going north. You can just barely make them out. They're maybe 400 or 500 feet away, and they're galloping. And behind them is a pack of warg riding orcs, about 20 of them. And leading them is a lone warg with no rider. It's bedecked in this bone armor, and this great crown of bones and gold decorates its head. It stands 2 feet taller than any warg that you've ever seen. And it's barreling at the front of this pack, chasing after these men. And you can hear the of the orc horns as they chase.
Varoth wheels around on his steed and he looks into his friend's eyes. The Warg King.
Shall be king no longer. And Cynric spurs Ciaro down the hill.
Varoth grimly nods and follows.
And yes, Baragon takes his side beside Faroth.
Also
So
on
the-
horseback, now gripping a great spear. I'd follow if we're all doing so.
At the first sound of the horn, Cain was growling and snapping his jaws, but he remained seated next to his mounted master. But at a slight whistle, as he spurs his horse forward, he releases the hound, who begins bounding forward eagerly to the hunt of the orcs.
So you're going after them. You ride to the top of the hill and begin riding after them. And you can hear again this like as the wargs, you can see them like kicking up big clumps of dirt and like splashing puddles. Go ahead.
Is there a defensible place? Is there a stream crossing or a sort of
Point of
defensible
some
place
kind.
that we could possibly cut them off and make a better defensive stand, basically, where they can't all surround us and get to us at once, but we can sort of block off their chase.
So you're on the top of a hill right now, and it's quite a hilly sort of countryside that you're in. They are going away from you towards north. The three men on horseback and the wargs and warg riders are chasing them. So they're moving away from you. They're probably maybe 500 feet away from where you are now. So you can just kind of see them in the distance. If you wanted to try and get them to come towards you, you are on the top of a hill. Otherwise, I mean, there are pretty regular hills. You could try and get to the top of one of those.
Baragon starts blowing on his hunting horn to see if that gets their attention, and if it does, I'll suggest we lead them to a defensible position. But otherwise, we'll just have to chase them down to protect the others, I guess.
So you blow the horn loud and clear atop the hill, and you can see that like two of these orcs like look over their shoulders. They've got bows and arrows in hand. They like fire them towards the men on horseback, and then they turn and look in your direction, still kind of galloping. There's like a sort of barely heard over the hill as like a bunch of them start to look in your direction. The order like passes up their column until it gets to the Ward King, who like rumbles something, and they continue chasing the men.
Okay.
Men look like they saw help was at hand, or perhaps recognised a non-orcish horn.
Yeah, I think you would think, looking at them, that they are maybe Dunedain, something like that. They don't look like travelers or merchants. They look like warriors, and they're riding as hard as they can. I think that that it would be hard to tell from here any expressions they have on their face, but they would have turned for a moment.
Looking at the terrain, are we able to, like, I know we're behind them, but sort of go parallel, and then if we keep blowing the horn, maybe the men will turn more towards our direction wherever the terrain allows, and we could cut off.
That seems possible, yeah.
Sure. So I shout that out, boating on Baragon's scheme. Perhaps if you signal them, they'll turn to us, and we can cut them at the pass, or at that ford over there.
Yeah, so you could begin kind of like galloping down the hill toward them, kind of off to the side, trying to gain on them. It's very difficult. Wargs are fast, and their horses are full gallop. But if you keep kind of blowing the horn, the men will kind of cop onto what you're doing and begin to kind of very, very slowly turn in your direction. So that goes on for maybe 3 or 4 minutes of continuous as you like thunder through this landscape. You can see a couple of the orcs on the back of the wargs kind of like look, and you can hear them now shouting to each other in their black speech. And a bunch of them kind of like fire arrows ineffectively. They're too far away from you still. Some of the arrows kind of whizzing past you.
If we get within a sort of 150 distance, or maybe a little over, I could take pot shots. Maybe that's what Dennis was going to say.
Yeah, and also as we get closer, the hunter will begin to sing. It may be hard to make out the exact words, but it's a battle song. And on your first attack or your next attack, everybody gets an additional D4 on their to hit.
Nice. So you start singing this battle song, this old battle song of the Wildermen, as you keep moving. You can see that there is up ahead a sort of stream, not very deep, maybe ankle deep for a horse, and you're moving towards that. The men are kind of moving around towards it as well, and there's a hill kind of risen between you and the orcs, so that they will kind of come around and see you all of a sudden. So we're going to roll initiative, and then we're going to take a real quick break because I need to use the little girl's room before we fight.
Yes.
Ooh.
God, I love the idea of us sort of like chasing them along their flank. It just feels really cool.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
I see that
I But I burned my natural 20 on initiative, guys. So
Nice.
oh, perfect. Good.
That's two 20s in a row you've got.
Yeah, that's.
Different sessions.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You know what? That's a really good point. Maybe I should switch it up a notch so you guys don't realize I'm cheating.
I just typed 20 because I heard you say 20, but actually I got an 8.
Who's cheating now? Hang on, I'm going to quickly follow suit with what Lloyd did. I got an 18. There we go. It's in the chat. I'll be right back, guys.
I'm going to go for a wheel. Be back in 2 seconds. That is a big initiative list.
Jesus.
I did say there was 20 of them, right, before
Yes.
this happened. Okay, just wanted to be clear on that.
We fought roughly that number before. It's fine.
You're
And we've got friends this time.
called a sick.
We can't talk about, like, unity and protecting people and stuff, and then the first people we come across we just abandon. Like,
I forgot to put in the horsemen, but they're in there now.
good. We might need them.
I imagine you will.
And I figure some people in our party are itching for a fight we might actually win.
Yes.
After the kicking we got. At least that's why I said what I did with Cynric. Just went. He shall be king no longer.
Just strikes me as rad that there's like a warg leading all these orcs. I just think that's really cool and weird.
Yep. Okay.
Warg lancers, that sounds such a grand term for what's just going to be a shitty stick.
Yep. It's just so I
it's
know what the attacks are. Nagror.
Nagror is a literal warg.
Yep, a huge warg.
Dope.
Like dire
That's
warg style.
The best. Yep. I'm all in. I'm sold. I'm already a buyer. We're good. That's amazing.
They had heard of Nagror when they first crossed the Misty Mountains as this like notorious bastard warg king.
Product of your imagination?
It's actually in one of the Middle Earth supplements for this game somewhere.
Oh, cool. Cool.
Now, he's not a gigantic warg. He's just like a warg that is like a king of wargs.
Yep.
So I've beefed him up and whatnot, but yeah.
He's like, they're like these animal gangs in Middle Earth, and Shadowfax leads the horses, and Nagror leads the wargs. Bill leads the ponies. Bill's got the pony gang.
Bill the pony king. Wargs can speak, seemingly, in the books anyway. They have a language between themselves and they can speak to orcs.
Oh, good.
Which is pretty rad. Okay, so you're kind of barreling, boom, 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 and you kind of like just come around the crest of this hill where it kind of dips down and you kind of splash into the little shallow stream. As you kind of like barrel around, you can see that the three riders are coming towards you, and they have like hope in their eyes, like they weren't expecting this. They thought they were going to die, and they see you, and there's like this cheer. They're like, ah! And then a second later behind them, you just see like all these wargs barrel around the corner. So you can see at the front of this pack is Nagror himself. Right behind him is this one particularly large orc, and he has a flaming sort of like torch. It's like a metallic thing. And there's like this big black smoke that comes from it, and he's got that as a weapon. He's holding on to the reins of his warg in the other hand. Opposite him is a small sort of sickly orc, and he's got all this like hideous sort of like protrusions all over his body. And he is wearing a helmet that you recognize. It is Nar's helmet. And then the rest of the warg riders behind him and them are kind of barreling behind. The hunter, it is your turn.
So as we pull up, I ready my elven great bow, and as soon as they appear, I will loose a shot. I guess probably at Uzug. That will be 20.
Yes.
Yeah, 28 to hit. Yep. Okay. And that will be 9 points of damage.
Okay, nice.
How far
And
away
then,
are they?
Wait, say that again, Dan?
How far away are they? Just to ask at the beginning.
The men are probably 120 from where you are, and the wargs and such are 30 feet behind them.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sorry, Dennis, was that it for you?
yeah, you said there was kind of like a hill on one side of us that they're coming around.
Yep.
Okay, so I'll have whistling a command. I will have Kane kind of start making his way to high ground towards where the orcs are coming at us.
Sure. You kind of make a whistle, and he begins running in that direction. Okay, Board, you're next.
The winds of Arthedain move through Bord's beard, and for a moment the hills around him turn into the forests of Mirkwood. He sees the hunter preparing to loose an arrow, issuing a command to Kane, and for a moment he becomes the Prince of Mirkwood himself, the Green Leaf, in battle with the darkness, destroying foe after foe after foe at Dol Guldur and beyond. in the dark places during this dark time. He swallows, and his throat burns with the wind of the west. He's not been this far, and it occurs to him now that he might die. He looks beyond the west and beyond the hills and beyond maybe perhaps even the mountains beyond. In front, billions. And he realizes that he longs to touch the sea just once. His hands ache, white-knuckled around this throwing spear. And he looks to his companions around him as the elves of Mirkwood in battle with the enemy disappear once again. This is his army now. He begins to move closer and closer to the oncoming onslaught as he will prepare to get a better vantage point to hit one of the larger enemies with his throwing spear.
No problem. So
Is that the most beautiful held action I've ever heard?
incredible.
Possibly.
Yeah. Yep. I mean,
Hey, it's all gonna be beat by beat. The rest of this combat, I'm gonna be like, I swing my axe. We got to get to the Blue Mountains, or the title of this session doesn't make sense.
I mean, you all have inspiration. They need to say that more frequently in this game, but you all have it for the elves and this and oh god. You can move with your horse 60, and then you would be I don't know how far, 150 minus 60. So you'd be 90 feet away then. I don't think you can throw your spear that far, but I don't know what you can do. But yeah, you can move out to the flank maybe and like lift the spear ready to throw as they continue barreling towards you. Faroth.
Faroth has charged with his friends many times before, and he has known that their success often lies with following Cynric, the rider of Rohan, the man who has trained all of his life for such an occasion. And as he is focusing, falling into line with him, Faroth's sight almost goes into slow motion. He sees these men rushing towards them, this host of wargs behind them, the water being flicked into the air like pillars of silver on each of their sides. Faroth feels this thump, thump, thump against his chest, and he looks down. The charge upon his steed is making the shard of the mattock that had been embedded within him with the fight with the Witch King. The only piece left of Nar's weapon that he'd now made into a necklace is around him, around his neck, and is hitting into his chest. And he looks up and he sees that dwarven helm. And Faroth, with fury in his heart, shouts, Baruch Hazad! Remembering what Nar would often say in such fights, that the dwarves are upon you in honor for his fallen friend. And he takes a shot with his great bow at the Warg King. That is a 21.
That's a hit.
Actually, that would have been more with the D4, but never mind. That was a waste. Regardless, it is 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 points of damage.
Yeah, so the arrow catches this Warg King in the shoulder, doesn't even slow as it continues barreling towards. Is that it for you?
Yeah, that was for me, yeah.
Okay. So yeah, the arrow, you can see a small sort of spray of blood, but it continues moving towards you. And that's what it's going to do now. It picks up speed, and it's almost upon those horsemen. It leaps forward and like lifts this big right claw and like smashes at the back leg of one of the horses as he tries to flee. Yeah, so it leaps forward and it lifts its claw and it just smashes the 2 back legs out from under the horse. And the horse like skitters to the side for a moment and then just into the water. The rider is thrown into the water, into the stream. He luckily rolls out from under the horse or jumps off the horse before it smashes on top of him. But there's a scream from the horse as Nagror gets the 2 legs from under it and it kind of barrels forward and falls into the stream. Nagror doesn't stop, just continues moving forward, certain that his other followers will deal with this man. It's got its eyes set firmly on you. There's a look of recognition there. And that will be Nagror. Cynric.
Where does that put Nagror? Did he move like a full amount?
Yeah, he would have moved 60 toward you.
Okay. So he's like 85 away, I think.
Yeah.
Something like that. Too far to charge anyway in one movement and get, unless I, can the horse double pace and then I attack?
Yeah, the horse can dash. The horse has its own action, so it can dash, disengage, or dodge. I think are the 3 things the horse can do.
Right. Okay. So I could make it. But he is swiftly being followed up by the other wargs, I'm guessing?
Yes. Yep. I mean, like, you know the way D&D turns work, like they haven't moved yet, but
yes,
it's clear that they will be with him in a second.
Yeah. There's no way that I could like sweep in and get that guy and get out again. I don't think. I don't know which direction. Like, are we coming from the side and they're kind of coming past us? I don't think I could really.
Yeah. So if you imagine the stream is kind of like cutting straight across, and there's like a big hill in the middle that cut. Like they were on one side, you on the other, and now they're running down the stream. You're running up it. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the man is probably. Like I say, a dash away. If you wanted to grab him, it's possible, but you wouldn't really be able to get back out again, and then the wards would be upon you.
Yes, that's my problem. I will see if the man can last a round. I doubt it, but I will charge and smash headlong into the Warg King. Axe drawn, attempting to flank it and smash the axe down upon it. Okay, that is a 21 to hit. Oh no, more. Sorry, 24 to hit.
Definitely.
The second attack is a miss. Most definitely, as that was a 3.
Okay. Yep.
What is this combat? It feels so long since we last did one.
Yeah.
Okay. That is 15 damage as I strike into the side, the axe dragging along the flank of the beast. As I look to charge straight at it, and then Ciaro and Cynric as one mind like veer suddenly to one side and round to the flank, and I just draw the axe along his flank and sort of spiral round him back to the front. That's
Yep. There's like a crunching sort of impact.
Oh, sorry. Because we're rangers in the wilderness, we get advantage on the first round of combat, so I can re-roll that second.
Go for it.
Still missed.
Okay.
Unless he has like a 13 AC, which I don't
He
imagine.
does not. No.
God damn it. Okay.
Yeah, so there's that sort of thunderous charge of a rider of the Riddermark, and then it's like sort of and the axe like smashes into the Warg King. You see like a bunch of the bone armor just like snap under the axe, and it digs deep into the flesh and like drags along the side of it, and this spray of sort of like blackish blood into the crystal clean river. This lovely little stream that you might have thought to drink of and make camp next to if it weren't for these for this situation. Suddenly stained with the black blood. And there's you ride past Nagror and towards the oncoming army before veering to the side. Okay, Uzug is this big orc. He's got this like Very thick, heavy armor on, and very mechanical. He's got this, like, as I said, this like torch. Seems to be some sort of contraption that's kind of blaring flame out of the top. He like reaches into this bag at his side. He pulls out some sort of like spherical metal container, and he like touches it to the torch for a second, and then he throws it in your direction. I'm going to need. Let's see. He can't throw it that far. He moves first, so then I will just need. Ooh, you didn't move far enough. It would just be Cynric then, I think, since you're the closest. Yes.
Oh boy.
I need you to make a dex saving throw, please.
Oh, there is no chance I could parry this back like a baseball.
If you wanted to try that, I will let you, but I mean, I guess Cynric might know what it is, but I think that you do.
So, I mean, I'm sure Cynric has never come across this weapon. This sounds like modern Isengard weaponry, not that he knows it comes from there.
Come on, Dan. It's about time you got hit again.
Yeah, I just really wanted to parry it back and think of the explosion. It would be awesome, but he doesn't know to do this. Him getting away is a non-natural 20.
Okay. Okay, so then Uzuk throws this thing. It just like kind of like, and it misses you, and you're like, oh, no big deal for a moment, but you still like kind of barrel Ciara and yourself away, and luckily you do so, because then there's like this huge fiery explosion that like sends up this huge shower of steam, and the grass around it is set aflame. You will take 6 fire damage from that explosion. Yeah, there's this big. The orcs don't look confused by it, but I think to all of you it would be like a nightmare or a wonder, maybe both.
Yes. Cynric feels the impact like hit the back of them. Cynric and Ciara both, and he kind of like rears up and turns around to see what is left. Charred marks perhaps being reclaimed by the river. And yeah, he probably breathes deep, his eyes wide. There is foul magic at play, or fouler weaponry.
The orc lets out this like wet chuckle. And continues riding his warg forward. Let's see, where are we at? That was Uzug. The Dundine, oh, thank you. The Dundine horsemen, the two of them who are still on their horses, like turn to see their friend knocked to the ground. One of them like wheels his horse around as quickly as he can and tries to move toward him. The other like takes a spear from his saddlebag and like throws it behind him at whatever is closest, and he manages to connect. So he throws a spear at one of these nameless warg riders, and it catches the warg rider in the shoulder, knocking him off the warg and into the water. He's still alive, it seems. He's like just like groans, but he's off the warg for now. The other one rides over to his friend and picks him up, although it looks like he's not going to be able to get very far before the orcs are upon him. Sorry, 1 second. Okay, so that's them. They're riding. The other one is riding towards your line as quick as he can, and the other one then picks up his friend and tries to make it towards you as well. The warg archers, you see, kind of all at once so you hear the Nagor kind of like bark something, and all these orcs with these like shit-eating grins, they smile wide, and they all like pull back these like hideous sort of horn bows, and there's like this, and then they all at once fire. So, okay, Cynric, what's your armor class?
My armor class is 18 when mounted, the same as Ciara.
Okay, so only one of them manages to connect to you, a 4, and that will do 6 piercing. One of them only manages to find a gap behind your shield. Then we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, that's 1. So board, an arrow catches you in the shoulder. It's going to be 5 only piercing damage from this orcish arrow. Beragond. One of the arrows kind of just barely whizzes past you. You can hear it in your ear and feel the breeze just barely missing your head. Oh dear. Faroth. It's a critical hit with an orcish arrow.
Oh no.
I know.
Question.
Yes.
If you have an ability that will potentially subtract from a roll, will that matter if it's a natural 20?
I don't
Probably
know.
not. Probably not. Thinking about
So
it.
I think critical hits are just automatically a hit. It doesn't matter what your armor class. Like you could have an AC 30, but it would still hit you. So I don't think so in that case. It's gonna be 12.
See,
go ahead.
because what it says is it subtracts the number rolled from the creature's roll. So
Okay.
would it then subtract that number from 20, making it whatever it is, 20 minus what I roll?
Yes, I think it would. I don't see why it wouldn't.
Okay, so I will use my ability of distraction, and I will spend my Morden's gift die to subtract. So basically, I'll probably see the shot coming from as I was taking higher ground, and I'll yell out a warning to him, and that will take 3 away from the roll. So it'll be a 17 to hit rather than that.
So it'll still hit, but it won't be as brutal as we had thought. In that case, it'll be 8 piercing damage, Faroth, as the arrow catches you in the forearm, grazing along it. Pretty deep.
Yeah, and I think Faroth manages to just catch a quick glance over at the hunter, as he struck, but he can tell without the warning that could have been in his throat. So he is grateful regardless. But it still hurts.
Nice work. Okay, and then we've got 2 more. So, okay, Hunter, you are going to take 6 piercing, and then finally another at Faroth, which is going to be only 4 piercing. So all these arrows flinging out all over the place, catching you unawares somewhat as these wargs kind of slavering continue splashing up all this water. Now some of it kind of painted black from orc blood, and the red blood of the horse, of course. Kor the Sick, who is wearing Nar's helm, he says something in black speech. He's got this sickly, awful little voice. He's small for an orc as well. You'd mistake him for a goblin almost. He's got a greenish sort of tint to his skin. And he's got this sort of curved, serrated blade. And you can see that it drips, or it's covered with this disgusting black ichor. And he is going to charge forward, and he's going to, I think, be able to get this. Yeah, I think so. He moved up. No, not quite. So he's going to continue running forward with his curved blade held high, and he's wearing this dwarven helmet atop his head, keeping him nice and safe. The Warg Lancers are going to continue barreling forward as quickly as they can. You can see that they each have these thick, heavy spears kind of couched under their armpits. Beragond, it's your turn.
Beragond, as he was riding forwards, got out his bow and instinctively held it up to his eye, but he's lost his eye and realizes it's useless. So he throws it. He just throws his bow away and draws his bone sword and leans down low on the saddle, pressing close to, keeping his position next to Beragond, next to Faroth, and he eyes the approaching Warg King, looking for a chink in the armor, and he's readying an attack for when it closes in.
Okay, no problem. The Marauders are going to do as the Lancers did, continue to just run towards you. There are a lot of wargs here, and you know that wargs, beyond being very fast and very dangerous, are also excellent combatants. like they're able to fight without orcs on their back or with orcs on their back. And you can see that there's like this sort of frenzy come upon them. There's lots of like snapping and howling as they barrel towards you. And we're back to the top with the hunter.
So how close are the closest enemy at this point?
So they would have moved 60, I guess, on their turn. So they would be 25 from Cineric. And how far did you move, Cineric?
I moved up to where the Wild King was.
Yes. Okay. So then from you on a horse, you could make it. I guess they're probably 50 or so from you. I'm making this up as I go along because I'm not interested in keeping track exactly of distances. Right. But I'll say 50 or something like that.
Okay. Well, I wasn't intending to charge you. I'm going to continue making my way up the rise with Kane.
Sure.
And I'll, if I can, hold his action until some of the mounted ones get within his movement, which is 40, for him to act. But it's the Ward King that's in the lead at this point?
Yeah, yep.
Okay, so I'll take 2 shots at him with my bow. Okay, so the first one is a 20, and the second one is a nat 20.
Oh boy, nice.
So the first one, so the first one is 12 points of damage.
Nice. And
now, let's see, so that's, I get an extra die, right, with this bow for the, so that's going to be 11, 16, 20 points of damage for the second hit.
Nice. 20, okay. And where's my table for this game? I don't think I have it anymore.
Oh no.
Oh no, I haven't used it in so long. I'm
not sure you gave it, well, you didn't give it to me, so I can't find it for you.
No. Okay, we'll go with, I don't want to use the Iscloff one because it's not appropriate for this game.
See how low you roll? And then
okay, I'll figure it out. Go ahead and roll me 2 d6s.
Your entrails come out of your eyes.
Rocks fall.
Eight. Two.
Give me the individual numbers, please.
2 4s.
Okay.
The water of the stream rises. There's a thundering of hooves.
Okay. Okay, so the arrow catches him right in the stomach, and there's like this yelp from this huge hound, this huge warg. And you can see that he stumbles for a second, like his legs give out for a moment, and he like splashes into the water before kind of like rising slowly back up again. You can see that he's wincing with every step now. It's obviously caught him somewhere unpleasant, and it's going to give him a -2 to his armor class as he cannot move to dodge well. As the arrow kind of embeds almost up to the fletching inside of him. Okay, so that was the hunter. Board.
Can I assume that all of this is happening instantaneously?
Yes.
Right. Okay. Board has been separating away, splitting away from the main group, and kind of using the speed of his horse to keep us nice, slow, steady ease towards the archer regiment of orcs. And he lifts up this spear, and using all of his might along the horse, he will throw it at the enemy, at these archers, as he's beginning to pick up speed towards them. And I have put my whole action into the chat, if that's okay. He immediately gets struck by this arrow and feels the pang of steel inside of his flesh, and he's back again in Mirkwood. And it's him surrounded by the enemy, cutting all of them down. He smiles, he thinks of her back home, and then he slams into the regiment of orcs on horseback,
Perfect.
swinging his axe.
Those are both hits. So the spear will catch one of these little runty archer orcs right in the center of the chest and knock him off his warg, kind of back into the stream. You like swing your axe and again smash into one of them, although this one doesn't fall off. Can you give me a athletics to try and barrel over one of these with your horse? Okay, yeah, perfect. So the axe blow kind of like hits one of these archers. You kind of like riding into the center of them, and then you like lean over and grab one of the orcs by like the front of his armor and just like lift him bodily off his warg and throw him across the other side. And the horse kind of like smashes into the warg itself, which steps to the side. Okay, perfect. So you see Bord with this incredible charge smashing into the warg archers, and Faroth, it is your turn.
Through the chaos, through the death, Faroth is still able to take note of the wisdom that Bord is showing, flanking and taking out the archers at the back of the line. Faroth, however, then directs his attention towards the War King himself and lowers down in the saddle, bracing for the impact. The flame of the north is drawn from his back. It seems to glimmer with the water that falls upon the blade and the light that beams from the sky, and he swipes down twice. I roll my attacks and damage, 24 and 21 to hit Lloyd.
Yes, sir.
And there we are. And that is, what did I put into there? That is 14 points of damage for the first one and 16 points of damage for the second. Faroth just arcs his blade down across at this thing. And and two big hits connect into the skin, again smashing some of this bone armor beneath the flame of the north. There's like fragments that spray off of this like a bone armor, and two big hits smash into the Warg King. It looks up in fury at you and is going to use its. You finish your turn? Yeah, absolutely. That's me.
It's going to use its legendary action at the end of its turn to try and bite your horse.
Just a question: when would my triggered action come off?
Oh, yes, you were next to Faroth, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep, you can do that now.
So yes, at the same moment that Faroth stabs at the War King, so does Baragon, hitting an AC of 18. Finds a gap in the bone armor and stabs through, and pulls out the bone blade with blood on it. 17 points of damage.
Excellent. Yep, so the two of you kind of in unison strike down at this, or up, I should say, at this Warg King as it stands before you. And you can see big welts of black blood beginning to pour from this matted fur of this disgusting creature. You can smell like the rotten meat from its breath as it like, and then it reaches out with its legendary action to try and bite the horse from under you, Faroth. And it will do so. How many hit points does the horse have? 12, right?
I think it's safe to assume that the horse is gone.
Yes. So you smash into the Warg King, and he like takes his huge jaws and wraps them around the front right leg of your horse, and you hear this like, and then and the horse just lets out this scream and kind of like begins to fall. Need you to make a dex save, please, Faroth.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll do my best. That's pretty good. That is that's 21.
Okay, so you're able to, like at the last second, leap from the back of the horse and land kind of without harming yourself too badly in the water. Baragon, the horse, Faroth's horse, begins to barrel into yours. I need you to make an animal handling check, please.
If Faroth is down, can I just abandon ship and try and land as well?
Yeah, if you want to, you can make a dex save.
Yep.
I think while Cars rolls out, I'll just say that while, he landed, I still like to think that Faroth had that thing, Saving Private Ryan, going under the water for a second. That
Yes.
Yeah.
So I get a 15.
Okay, no problem. You're quick, Baragond, quick enough to see what's happening. And you're able to like jump off the back of the horse and land with a splash in the water for a moment, as Faroth's horse kind of like screams and barrels into your own, and your own kind of panics and runs off. And the Ward King lets out this like wet chuckle. And that is going to be the end of Faroth's turn. Now it's Nagror's turn. Nagror is going to slash and bite and gnaw and all those things. Let's see. Okay. So a claw comes for you, Faroth. You duck under it. And then another, and you leap over this one. But the third attack is a bite, and it slams into your left arm, and you can feel the teeth like knives there. Jesus, you're going to take 24 points of piercing damage. They were maximum damage. Yeah. As this terrible wound just like smashes, maybe you hear or you feel sort of like fracturing of some bones in your arm, as it crunches into your arm heavily, and it kind of like Nagror kind of like pulls like a dog would, snarling, and finally releases you.
Was that 24? Sorry, Lloyd, just double checking.
24, yeah.
Yeah, and Faroth just gives that scream, and he sort of wrenches his way away from the grip of this fiend, but most of his arm goes with it.
And then he speaks. He says, after he like lets go of your arm, he says, "What luck! You are familiar to me, all of you. Know that your dwarf suffered long at the hands of the Dread Lord, and that he gave you up. For days he resisted, but the sorcerer's fingers of the Witch King broke his mind in twain. He spoke every secret of your quest. He spoke of every weakness that you have. And the Dark Lord has learned much from him, and he screamed in his final moments. We did not anticipate meeting you here, but more is the pleasure."
It's like a gut punch, and Faroth looks with darkness at this warg, and he says, "You speak of luck. You'll find no luck here."
Cynric.
Cynric had hoped like to engage the Ward King in some sort of ongoing running fight, as he eyes the quickly moving wall of flesh and teeth and fur crashing into the water behind him. But now his companions are on foot. The three people we're trying to save, two of them got dismounted, one of them still mounted and went to pick up one of his friends and then left. Who is the last remaining friend?
Two of them, only one of them was dismounted. The other two were riding. One of them kept riding while the other went back and picked him up and is now riding towards your line.
Right. So he is just in front of the tide of wargs.
Yeah.
Likely to get him this turn.
Exactly.
Okay. How far away is that line of wargs? Roughly, within throwing range, weapon distance?
Definitely within throwing range. Yep.
Cynric looks to like the tussle as Faroth like pulls his bleeding arm from the mouth of this beast, and he eyes the neck of the beast, and if they bring down the head of the warg, hopefully the rest would flee. But whether they would survive that long, he does not know. He is going to go for something relatively tricky. The bomb, the terrible magic wrought by that orc. He saw him pull it out. Presumably?
Yes. Yep.
From a bag, presumably filled with others.
Presumably, yes.
Okay. Can I light a torch, light an arrow, and fire it in there quick enough, or do I have to get close enough to throw a torch at this orc?
You were a horse lord of Rohan. You can absolutely do that.
Okay, fair enough. So he sparks one of the torches that are bound to the side of Ciaro, and the rags around it, and puts rags around an arrow of his bow, his longbow that he draws. The flaming bow is pulled, and he is doing the Parthian shot, like behind him, ready to run, and he eyes the bag as it bounces up and down with the tumultuous wave of wargs coming towards them, and he takes the shot. Now I have to go and find that. 19.
Okay.
I have another shot, and I also can use my inspiration. So I'm going to take another shot and inspire that shot. That inspired shot is a 23. So
Okay.
the first one and
Right.
then 23.
So you're kind of like riding away, and you like turn and fire. The first thunks into the bag for a moment, and there's like a little kind of, as the bag begins to flame, you see the orc look down and then back up and then double take and look back down at it, and he goes, "Oh fuck!" And then the second arrow hits, and there is a new sun is born in the middle of this battlefield. Simply a huge explosion. I think that you would probably almost be knocked off your horse, as would most of the warg riders nearby. If they're not instantly incinerated or knocked off their wargs, the wargs are aflame. There's a huge gout of steam from the water. Nagror is on fire. I'm going to need both Beregond, Bord, and Faroth to make me dex saves, please. And you can have inspiration for that incredibly good idea, Dan.
Thank you. I felt stuff was going to get real hairy real quickly, so...
What a cool image.
Yeah.
Just that massive explosion.
Okay, so you, okay, Bord, you are going to take just a buttload of fire damage, but the other two should be okay.
It's okay, guys. I got a 20 on initiative.
Yeah, that's all that counts, man.
I hope the archers were like towards the back, and maybe you would be cushioned from the blow, but maybe he didn't see you dive in too much.
The minute I heard Lloyd didn't care, I was like, all right, I'm just going for whoever I want.
Yeah. So you're going to take 16 points of fire damage, Bord. Beregond and Faroth, you will take 8. You see that most of the orcs are aflame. Many of them are like falling as crispy little orcs into the water, where there's a huge of steam every time they hit. Most of the wargs are on fire. Nagror is on fire. I'm going to say that you, Beregond and Faroth, are going to be knocked prone into the water as the only possible way that you could not be on fire. And there's just chaos up on top of the hill. Hunter, you can see that for a second you can't see anything. There's just it's like bright light. You can feel the heat against you of this huge flame that appears from nowhere. There's no sign now of what was once Uzug the Flame. Some bits of charred metal remain, but that's about it. And then there's panic and screaming. When you bring your head back above the water, Faroth and Beregond, you can see that everything is fleeing in every direction. All of the wargs and orcs are trying to get away. Nagror is pelting it away as quickly as he can. There is just chaos. That was a very good move. Well done. So Nagror will use his legendary action at the end of your turn, Cineric, to leg it. And then Uzug is very, very dead. The Dundine Horsemen, they would have taken some of the fire damage. They're slightly on fire.
Just a quick question. When it pelts away, even though we're prone, do we get am I able to have a opportunity slash out at him before he
So
goes?
I'll say you can stay above the water and take the opportunity attack and take the full damage, or you can duck beneath the water and not get it. You know, because I feel like either you've ducked beneath the water to not get burned, or you're up and facing it. You know what I mean? I know, like mechanically, that's not correct, but I think it like makes more sense.
Yep. No. I'm intent on him, so I'll take the full damage. It was 17,
Okay,
was it?
16.
16. Okay.
Okay, so you can make an opportunity attack, certainly.
Does that mean I can too?
If you want to take 16 damage instead of 8, yes.
Why not?
So hit an AC of 28.
Absolutely.
I also hit an AC of 28.
Just makes it.
Liar. 24.
My goodness.
17.
Okay.
And I shout as this comes in, when your grandsire Catcherath bit the hand off Beren, the Silmaril gave him a stomachache that drove him wild. Remember that pain.
Okay, inspiration. Nagor is just whelping and whimpering as he's like fleeing. He looks now like a little dog as opposed to the great warg king that he is. All sort of sense of grandeur or of arrogance is gone. It's just a need to survive as he flees as quickly as he can. So that was Jonathan. The warg archers are toast. Most of them, 3 or 4 of them, let's say 4, are not totally burnt, and they immediately begin to flee. Board, if you would like to make an opportunity attack, you certainly can.
If I want to make an archery attack?
Opportunity.
Opportunity, sorry. I was like, oh, all right, if everyone's doing it. I don't think Board would. I think Board being hit by the explosion, I think he'd be kind of messed up in a different way.
Yeah. So Nagor will use his final edge reaction of this turn to flee again at the end of your turn, Board. Sorry, no, at the end of the warg archer's turn. Core the Sick is living, although barely. You can see that the metal of the helmet has like burned into his flesh, and that the metal armor he's wearing is like smoldering, and there's like this stink of burning orc skin. And he is just like hacking at his warg to get it to run the hell away as quickly as he can, and that's what he's trying to do. The warg lancers, 2 of them are not burnt to a crisp. They continue barreling forward, protecting their master, and one of them is going to try and attack you, Farath, as you stand in the water. So that one is going to be 20 plus to hit.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, 16 from the lancer. The spear, as the warg just like catches you in the shoulder. I need you to make a strength save or be knocked prone.
Okay. Yeah, that catches Faroth right in the chest. He goes down.
Yeah,
he's
so
still alive, but
yes.
like but he's fallen over.
Yeah, so he like barrels into you and catches you like just here and spins you to the ground, and you're knocked into the water. Beregond, you were actually quick enough to jump out of the way. You see this like lancer who's slightly aflame, just got this big spear, and he like reaches it out towards you, but you're able to dash to the side at the last second, barely missing you as he barrels past you. That's the lancers. Beregond, it is your turn.
So this is a warg rider. Yep.
This is a lancer that's just gone past you. He's probably 30 feet behind you now.
30 feet would be enough of movement to sort of run up on him, and
Yes.
I'm going to try and what am I doing?
Do it.
Okay, I'm going to run up and leap and try and land on the saddle of this warg rider and run the and stab fail Vedra fail the dragon spirit of the moon sword through the orc rider's orc rider's armor. So let me just. What do you want me to roll for this?
You can make an acrobatics followed by an attack.
Acrobatics will be. Do I have acrobatics? I don't have anything special, so it's just a straight +4. But I'll use my. I'll use my inspiration to jump on, which is lucky. I get a 22
Yes.
for acrobatics, and then I'm not going to get a sneak attack on him, so it's just a normal attack, isn't it?
Yep.
This isn't going to work. Never mind. I've committed to it now. And I roll a natural 1.
Oh dear. Okay, so he's kind of like, you know, the way that knights do this, like when they're jousting, they kind of like ride past, and he's like turning the warg again to like come back around. And it's at that stage that you jump onto the back of the warg, and you like try to hold on to the back of this orc and try and get a swing in, but there's too much movement going on, and you just barely miss. Just barely. Although you're able to hang on to the back of the orc, your grip on the warg is not very good, unfortunately. So that's Beragond. The Marauders, they're all still alive, as are their wargs, and they're going to continue riding forwards. One of them is going to ride towards... Actually, Cineric, you're quite far away now, haven't you? You've moved while shooting.
Yeah.
That's fine. Two of them are going to run up the hill towards this hunter, while the other is going to run forwards towards the downed Faroth.
If it gets within 40 feet, can Kane take his held action?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
Faroth. One of the wargs, you can, I guess, under the water, you can feel this like... and then your like body is kind of like moved to the side as like there's this big splash, and you feel this like bite of an orcish blade into you, which is going to do 5 points of damage.
Jesus.
As you're beneath the water. The other two are rushing up towards the hill. Kane can definitely take his action now.
So basically, as it charges up the hill, he's going to leap at the rider.
Nice.
So that'll be a 21.
Yes.
Okay, and this says for that moment, I guess. So 7 points of piercing damage.
Okay.
And it must make a DC 11 strength check or saving throw, or do you have disadvantage on its next attack?
It actually fails that.
So yeah, it'll have disadvantage on its next attack.
Okay, so Kane like leaps up, maybe jumping on the head of the warg for a second, and then like leaping up on top of the orc and biting into his shoulder as the orc is like fearless in the face of these larger canines, if you can even call them canines. And then they'll get to you basically, and one of them misses both attacks. I guess the warg is tired getting up the hill, and there's not enough momentum. He like swings lazily, and you're able to jump out of the way. The one with the dog on him also misses both attacks. So the two of these warg riders come up to you. They're big, sort of armored orcs, and they're trying to swing at you, but you're too quick, and you've got Kane on your side. Okay, that was the Marauders. Back to the top. Hunter, your turn.
So at this point, how far away is Nagor?
He's moved twice using his legendary action, so he's 120 feet away from where he was.
Okay, let's see. Even though I'm likely to provoke attack opportunities, I'm going to kick my horse forward. I don't know, whatever its movements would be in pursuit, and then take a couple shots at him.
Okay, so you will take opportunity attacks from the orcs and the wargs.
Okay.
Okay.
Hopefully this won't be my last act in this game.
So the orcs first. So that will be a hit. What's your AC?
17.
Okay, yep, so that will hit. Ooh, that's going to be 13 from the first orc to you. The second one misses, and then the wargs are going to try and bite your horse. That's what they do. One of them connects for 14, which is going to, yeah. That's their whole job, is killing your horses. So the orc manages to like bash you in the shoulder with this like sort of hammer type thing it has, and you kind of like throw it to the side, and then you feel the horse begin to like scream as the warg kind of bites into its stomach, and it begins to like fall. Can you make me a dex save?
I sure can. Yeah, I think I'll use my inspiration. Yeah, that's better. It would be 23.
Yep. So you're able to jump off the horse and land on the ground, although now you are surrounded by 2 wargs, 2 orcs, and you can move now. You've taken your opportunity attacks if you still want to.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and let's see. Well, can I take my action and then move, or do I need to move first?
Yep. No, whichever you want.
So yeah, it's still within range, so I'm going to take the 2 shots first.
Okay.
So that's a only a 15 for the first one, but then another natural 20 for the second.
Okay, 15 misses, but 20 obviously is a hit.
And that will be 11, 18, 22 points of damage.
Okay, nice. And 2d6s, please.
A 2 and a 6.
2 and 6. Okay. 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 This is not good for Nagror. Okay, so it's make him drop his weapon. He doesn't have a weapon. So right into the shoulder, kind of like above where the shoulder meets the back. And you see for a second he like stumbles. He's gonna like fall onto the ground and roll before like rising again. He's gonna basically not be able to move on his turn. Until he like reaches back and pulls that arrow out of his shoulder.
Okay, and how far are we up on this rise from down below?
You're about 30 feet up.
Is it straight down, or is it an incline?
It's an incline, yeah. That's how they came up to you. Yeah.
And you said that is there water below, but it's pretty shallow?
Yeah. There's a shallow stream, yeah.
Yeah, I guess basically what I'm going to do for my movement is try to shoot back down the hill now that my steed's dead and get down around the others so we can hopefully finish the rest of these off.
Okay, no problem.
So I'll move my 30 and Kane will move his 40 to start running towards the other.
Yep. Yeah, so they took their opportunity attacks already, so they can't attack Kane either. So the 2 of you kind of like scoot down the hill trying to get away from these marauders. Bored.
The explosion sounded as soon as Board threw the orc from his mount, and he's not sure how he got struck or where it came from, but as soon as he was able to open his eyes, he realized that he was the luckiest person around. First and foremost, Enolan, the horse that he had only known for a short time, completely decimated by the explosion, as well as many of the warg archers around him. But he stands up, and they're running away, and he grabs an orc archer, and I'll just comment here. He grabs his axe and swings it down into his neck and into his chest, and he throws the orc away if it kills him. And then immediately discarding the axe, grabbing a great spear with his extra attack, he will lift it up into a second, like maybe a warg that comes around, if there is one, or an orc, and tries to just lift it off the ground with his strength.
Yeah, you can absolutely do that. Killing first the orc with the axe, and then with the spear lifting one up above you, and it's kind of like letting it this like wretched like.
Yes. The blood trickles down, and he's covered in it, and it ends up in his mouth, and he swallows it, and his throat burns with the wind of the west.
Radical. So the board, Faroth.
So before I begin describing what I do on my turn, Lloyd, which is the closest foe to me, despite the fact that Faroth is still underwater at this point?
So the Lancers had both ridden past you. So probably them. They're about 30 feet behind you where Varagond is. Other than that, you could run. No,
There's a marauder on him.
Sorry?
There's a marauder on him.
Oh, yes, there is. There's one right on top of you. Sorry, my bad.
And he's on Warg, isn't he?
Yes, yep.
Okay, perfect. So I like to think that this marauder sort of like had gone for Faroth and then done that thing like you were saying before. They go away for a bit, wheel around and get ready to charge again. And it's at that point that the marauder's doing this that he thinks that he sees almost like a glimmer beneath the water. And then bursting from beneath the surface, the flame of the north gleaming in his hand, Faroth bellows, "Anarion!" as he declares his royalty, as he does royalty revealed. First of all, those around me get, yes, max 9 HP back, including myself, because I'm going to need it. And as this warg marauder charges Faroth once again, he's got to make a wisdom saving throw of 15.
Fails it.
Perfect. He is terrified of me, and then as he's sort of making the charge, Faroth is going to swing with his 2 attacks. One is a 19.
Yep.
The other one is a natty 20.
Excellent.
Standard hit is 14, natty 20, 30.
Okay, you can tell me. I'll tell you what it looks like. First of all, he's like barreling towards you with this like shit-eating grin on his face, like dinner. And then you like stand up and you declare your royalty, and he just sees like this bright light, and he like cowers away. The warg like almost stands up on 2 feet as it cowers in the face of it, and then you just like swing, and you can tell me how you murder him.
Yeah, so he's in mid-charge, but it's a charge that he totally fails at, as he's almost blinded by the gleam of the blade. And Faroth's blade just arcs straight up through the warg, and it cuts through into the orc's throat. And he sort of topples sideways, and there's a colossal splash as Faroth, haggard but still alive, turns to the next foe.
Nice. Okay, that was Faroth. Nagror is going to, he's kind of stopped, and you can see that there's like an arrow wedged deep in his shoulder, and he like struggles to turn enough. He like takes his claw and begins to like pull at the arrow, eventually managing to pull it out of his shoulder, and he begins to move again. He's not able to move on his turn. He had to take an action to pull that arrow out. And that's what he does on his turn. Cynric.
Cynric, not expecting that to be quite as effective. He doesn't know the realms and reaches of this foul orc technology, but stood stunned by the destruction he had wrought to friend and foe alike. And starts to look around to hope that the foul magic had not cost any of his friends' lives. And he sees Bord stand with his warg banner almost drenched in blood, and breathes a sigh of relief. And he looks across the water and sees Faroth leap, gleaming and shining, screaming, decapitating orc, warg alike. And breathes another. He sees Varagond running in the distance upon the back of a warg.
Yep.
Riding upon the back of a warg, and sees the hunter coming down, fresh, relatively untouched, horseless. And then he looks to the king with his friends in relative safety. It is up to him to try and end what they had started. The arrows had helped slow him down as they arced over his head and into the shoulders of the Warg King. He goes the full 120 on Ciaro, and you said he was 120 away and couldn't move.
Yep.
He looks at the back of that neck again, and the X gets closer and closer. That is a 17 to hit and a 19 to hit.
Those are 2 hits.
That is 15 damage and 16 damage, respectively.
Ouch. Okay. Barely breathing now at this stage. Nagror has taken countless wounds. There's arrows protruding from every part of him. He looks up at you with hate, but still breathes.
Shall be no king. That's what
He says, "This will not be the end. We will hunt you to your last day. You will never know rest, never know peace. Every place you visit shall be razed to the ground, and every person you love will be shown the truth of the shadow. And the Dark Lord knows your names. Cynric, Fyroth, Beragond. Your friends have fallen already, and these new ones shall fall too." Uzug is so dead. The Dunedain, 2 of them leap into the water next to you, Fyroth, on either side of you, and they shout, "Elendil!" and they slash forward with their swords at the warg before you. And between them, they manage to cut it down. One of them slices almost through the front leg of the warg. The second, the sword goes up through its mouth, and it dies before you. That's the Dunedain. The warg archers, those who remain, are fleeing as fast as they can. There's one standing before you, Bord, as you hold its ally aloft, and it just is scrambling in the water, trying to get away. Its eyes are wide, and it stands and it's and it just starts running as fast as it can without its warg mount, terrified. Kor the Sick continues to hack at his warg. You can see there's bloody wounds in the back of the warg as he just encourages it to run as fast as it can. It's now cresting over a hill. It's moving away from Nagror, such is the loyalty of orcs, trying to save his own skin as opposed to that of his king. And the Lancers, one of them has Beragond on his back, and he's going to take his sword and just try and stab behind him. I'm going to make a roll of disadvantage to try and strike at you. I rolled 2 1s with disadvantage. Yep. So he tries the first and misses and overbalances, and he tries to swing the second, and then he just falls from the warg into the water. With his heavy armor, he's as he the water is only maybe 3 feet deep, but he's struggling to get up out of it in his thick armor. The other one, however, is not as harried in the same way, and he turns the warg and sets his eyes on Fyroth and begins charging. Brum, 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 brum. With a hit. See, can you say? Oh, it's not good damage. It's going to be only 7 damage, Fyroth. He rolled a 2 on his d12. So just a grazing blow that hacks into the same shoulder you'd been hit on earlier. So there's pain, but not enough. And he barrels past you. Those are the Lancers. Beragond, you're on the back of a warg.
Beragond now realizes that this is not a horse, it's a warg, and he has no way of controlling it. And he just clings on, leaning far forwards and clinging on with all his strength, and he holds back his dragon sword, ready to if the warg goes for one of his allies, or his rides in to attack any of the humans, he'll use the distraction of it attacking to plunge his blade into its neck. But until that moment, he's just clinging on.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, you're in a position where you can easily kill this warg if you so choose. At the end of your turn, Baragond, Nagror is going to try and flee. So, Cynric, you can make an opportunity attack.
Okay. That is 18.
That's a hit.
Excellent. Oh, 12 damage. That was only a 2 on the dice. Can Ciara make an opportunity attack?
I don't know, actually. I assume...
The war horses have a hoof attack. We've gone through this before, but
yeah, sure.
I just thought, I mean, I would chase and try and kill this thing, but I don't mind.
Sure, go for it.
Let me just, I've got the rules right here. $16 to hit.
Oh, not quite.
Are you counting the -2 to his armor from the previous?
Yeah, so his AC is now 17.
Damn it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I know, so close.
Strike.
So you slash out with the axe, and Nagror like whimpers away, and Ciara like rises up, and like the hooves, and maybe one of them catches Nagror just like a bruising strike to the shoulder, but not enough. As it like whimpers and cowers, its tail firmly between his legs, as he begins to run again, just desperate to escape and save its pathetic life. So at the end of Baragond's turn, the Marauders, the two at the top of the hill, are going to ride down. They're going to now try and save their king. They are in fact loyal. So they're running or riding towards you, Cynric, although I don't think you'd even see them at this stage. You're quite far away. So that's what they're doing. And the other Marauder is dead. At the end of their turn, Nagror will use his legendary action to run. And then Hunter.
So, what is still moving down here at the bottom of the hill?
So the two Marauders are now going away from the combat. They're going towards where Cynric and Nagror are. Other than that, there's two Lancers. Actually, there's only one now. The other one is almost drowned. One of them has just ridden past Farth. He's actually probably quite close to you. All the orcs around board are like either terrified, running, or dead.
So, how far away is he now? He's about 150, and then he moved twice. So how far would he be?
Nagror now from you is probably he would be 240 feet away, I think.
So if it's over my min but still under my max, I can attack, but it's with disadvantage, correct?
Yes.
Because the first one is short range, and then the next one is long range.
Maximum. Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm going to take a couple desperate shots here. So yellow will be. Oh, dang it! Lost a nat 20, but that would be a 19 to hit.
Yep.
So 10 points of damage. And the second one would be 17 to hit.
Just barely.
And that would be another 11 points of damage.
You can see him fleeing, and two arrows like into his back leg, and he like rolls and hits the ground, and stops running.
And then I'll have you said that one of the Lancers basically just kind of rode by me.
Yes.
I'll have a cane launch at that one as it goes by. That's 18.
18. Yep.
Okay. Shoot, what is his damage? Oh, it's 1d6. Plus one. Oh, another 7 points of damage.
Okay, nice. 7.
And then it needs to make the strength DC 11 or have disadvantage.
Yep, it makes it.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see. So that was Hunter. Nagror is not taking any more legendary actions. At this stage, Nagror is slain. The rest of the orcs are well within your power to deal with. So I would just have you guys describe to me how you finish the remaining orcs.
Cynric charges full charge into the fallen Nagor and then buries his axe deep into the beast, just to make sure.
Yeah.
Perhaps it was still living. No one will ever know.
Yeah.
The hunter would attempt to try to take one of the orcs alive, for brief questioning at least, like where they were going,
Sure.
that kind of thing, whatever. The other one, you said Core was alive, but he made his escape, right? He went in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
Yep, okay.
And just because it's got to be done, my warg that I'm on the back of is so busy trying to bite at me and snap at me whilst it runs that it doesn't look where it's going and goes over a cliff like Aragorn. And I somehow survived the fall, but it does, or its back is broken. I'm able to finish it off once we land.
Nice.
There was like one marauder left, wasn't there, where Faroth was? So I like to think that this last one basically barrels towards Faroth, and he has an insane look in his eye. That insane look that he gets when he's always on like, oh, I don't know, 1 HP. And this warg just pounces at Faroth, and he falls backwards, cutting with the Flame of the North. Open this warg as it goes over him. The orc topples off, and then Faroth, with just a dagger, just starts stabbing this orc relentlessly in the water until he stops moving and gurgling.
These few retreating orcs are going to end up being dwarf fodder in the mountains. And that thought passes through Bord's mind as he lifts up his throwing spear at the final one, retreating in fear and agony. And he chucks it, hurls it, and it lands directly in the back of the orc. The orc falls limply, and for a moment alive. Bord swears that the winds of Eriador play a trick on him, and he swears he can smell the sea all the way from here.
And when Baragon returns, he returns with a warg pelt.
Perfect. So the orcs lies laying around you. The once clear and beautiful stream now sort of blackish red from the copious blood. And the Dunedain kind of like go around finishing those orcs and wargs that remain. Most of the wargs have actually gotten away. They've like run away into the hills. But that's typical for this kind of engagement. One of the Dunedain kind of like finishes like shanking the head of a dwarf before pulling his dagger out and like wiping it in the dwarf and orc before wiping it into the orc's clothing and puts it away and comes over and he says, "Oh, we are grateful, so grateful. What a chance meeting. Thank you."
Faroth looks wildly at the man and just like, and he's clutching at his arm. The adrenaline is still sort of keeping him going. You can see visibly shaking. And he says, "Are there any more of you? How many of them were you?"
There were more. There were 10 of us. They have harried us for days, this pack.
We need to move. Any that would have escaped would have sent word. And with that, Faroth looks across into the distance because he's concerned. He hasn't been able to tell what's happened with Nagor, indeed Cynric, or the others that pursued, so he has no idea if they're alive or dead. And panicked, he starts wading his way through the water, and he spots the one that had died. I believe it was Azug, the one that had Nar's.
Yes.
Film. Yeah.
No. Kor had the helmet. Uzug was the fiery one.
Apologies.
That
He
one's
looks
just
down
bent
at that
across the
orc.
metal.
Yeah. And looks furiously, but he's waiting for the others, and he wants to know if they're alive, basically.
Yeah, so you would gather up, I guess, after a few minutes, and you would see that everyone has made it just about. Yeah, so in the tumult, it was clear that Cor escaped, which was the sickly-looking orc, the smallest. Not surprising that he was the one to flee first. While the other, Uzug, the flame, is now nothing but bones and molten metal. There are a number of dead orcs, but some of them did escape, not many. But yeah, the Dunedain would tell you that this is not the whole band. They have seen more.
There are always more.
I think returning on foot, Baragon would probably be the last to make his way back to the camp, with the pelt of the warg over his shoulder and trembling and sort of bloodied as he comes back, and throws the pelt down and sort of sinks down to the ground and looks up at Cynric and says, how does my hair look?
Sinner could probably go to the camp just around I don't know, maybe a similar time, because being dragged behind CRO is the large corpse of this warg roped up. And he looks at Berigund after laughing, and sort of runs a hand through his own hair and across the AO crown that he wears, the little horse crown. Never better, my friend. Never better.
Yeah.
If you're looking for a pelt, I may have found you a better one, though.
I wonder what this wolf, this warg king is, he says, looking at it. Back in the stories of the First Age, they told of Karcharoth, who was raised by Melkor, the enemy of old, to be the king of wolves, and it guarded his throne in Angband. Jaws of Thirst, it was called. This must be one of his sired many offspring. I guess this is a distant descendant of that fell wolf.
All that concerns me is that it is dead. Well done, everyone. And he looks and he's like sort of checking to see everyone is there. Everyone is still on their feet. He looks across to Bord and the hunter, and he gives them a nod. He had not seen these people fight before, and now he has got a measure of them and pleased for them to be there. We need to move.
I'm afraid I have lost my steed.
Me too. I have a habit of doing that.
Bjorn looks to the ground and utters a low-toned prayer. Lloyd, is this the kind of, do you think Middle Earth is the kind of realm where someone can pull an arrow out of themselves, or do they need help from somebody else? Is that something you care about?
I don't mind. I think that
At this point,
you could do it.
Bord does it, and you hear what kind of sounds like a whimper, but it's very quickly decapitated at the end, and you see a bloody arrow get thrown into the dirt.
The hairs on the back of your neck stand up, all of you, all of a sudden. There's like a sudden coldness that comes over the place. You can see a sudden like chill, steam from your breath. And the body of Nagor twitches. Its eyes begin to like burn bright. There is no escape for you. No safety nor peace shall you find. Every crop you plant shall taste only of ash. I see you. And we're going to take a quick break there.
I swear it was dead. Cynric hacks at it.
You had one job.
Cheers.
I am back.
I was just saying, Sinner, it goes, I swear it was dead. And then like, hacks at it.
I do like that this is called the Blue Mountains, and we probably won't see them.
No, that's what you end it with, in the distance. Blue. Halfway into the session, I was thinking, you know what? I mentioned that earlier, but I bet he names these things and they just go off the rails all the time. Like, I wouldn't be surprised, just the amount of it.
Oh, it's happened before. Believe me. I name the titles and then we never get to where we're meant to be, and then I have to change them after.
Like, both of those encounters were meant to be things you saw. Like, the elves were meant to be like, oh, cool, there's some elves. They're going to the west. How sad. And this is meant to be a symbol that there are orcs in these lands. Obviously, you're not going to chase after 20 wargs, but then you did.
Yeah.
So both of those were not planned as like big things, but I'm glad that they went the way they did.
I know you said 20, and I know that's a lot to take, but I didn't feel, like I said, we made the promise to help everybody, and perhaps we were itching for a victory after the last fight, so we were going to get tangled with something. So
also, I was itching to use this character sheet, Lloyd. This character sheet that you built for me. A lot of people don't know I asked Lloyd Collins here to make me a beautiful Jarl DM character, one that is just beastly and wonderful, because I never play that. And I'm telling you, man, I hit everything. I've rolled pretty well, to be clear. But if I could roll a 9 and hit a bunch, or less. But it feels really cool to play a Bjorning for the first time too.
Awesome.
And he should be imposing when it comes to combat, right? Like, he's huge, he's burly, he's a warrior, and he should feel
absolutely.
that way.
Absolutely. But I'm looking around, and even the cool thing about the system, it seems like, is even the people who, are imposing. A rider of Rohan is nothing to be trifled with, but compared to like a beast of a man, I'm not entirely sure about character size, but it seems like everybody can really accomplish and help out in a way that feels true to the setting too.
Yeah. Like, I think combat-wise, Baragond is like the least obviously effective, but he does have sneak attack and he is very crafty, but then when it comes to certain other situations, he's a god,
I do wish Dennis should have sang to us for that plus D4 or that +4.
I entirely forgot to use that at any point.
I used it.
If Ciara could understand it, maybe she would have got that hoof attack thinking about it.
Because I really wanted Nagro to get away. I really wanted him to get away.
I know you did. We've heard and been harried by various.
We really didn't want him to get away.
Yep, that was clear.
The thing is that, like, if Faroth hadn't stood up and charged and killed and roared an Arion and killed that guy, I probably would have gone to protect my friends. But everyone kind of dealt with who they were dealing with for a moment, and then I was like, well, he's just in range, and I'm the only chance potentially.
It's been a while since we had a mass combat, and I think you might have gone up by 2 levels since then, so you're a lot more effective than I remember.
It was a bloody combat. I still think, regardless of the levels, for instance, if they hadn't all exploded, we probably would have been eaten by multiple wargs.
Yeah, that was a big change in the fight for sure. Okay, I think we're all. Oh no, Rob's not back yet.
Because I remember how strong. I don't know how strong we have to get till I'm not terrified of wargs in the night, but I remember how much they've eaten me, certainly.
Well, the thing about wargs in my tactical mind is that what they're for is to kill your horses, right? That's their main objective, because they can, and they can make attacks the same as the orcs can do. And so what they're really good at is if they're chasing you or you are fighting them on the back of a horse, they bite your horse and then you fall down and then they can eat you,
I think I've almost died to wargs twice, at least.
Yeah.
I know I got savaged and got a grievous lasting wound by a dire warg before.
Yeah, that's true.
So I have a respect for them. Also, I want my horse to live. So
I think that Nagror has been the most eloquent baddie so far, who's not a ghost, and he's a dog, which I love.
I do like the idea that, like you mentioned earlier, that wargs they speak. It's not, these aren't just big wolves, these are intelligent creatures that are kind of shaped like big wolves. And And boy, are they big.
Oh, yeah. All right, Rob, you're pushing it.
Yep. He's gone for second breakfast.
Yeah.
I don't know what time it is anywhere.
Midnight here.
Yeah. On the point about combat, I always felt like behind Nar and behind Faroth, I was like maybe third in the whole combat strength thing. They seem to hit and do more damage than me, be it magical item or raging dwarf. But I tend to try and make up for it for making clever plays.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
But also maneuverability is super
That's true.
powerful, you know, which you haven't.
Mm.
Okay, so these three Dunedain kind of a little bit after you've kind of like seen to some of your wounds and stuff, maybe moved out of the stream and sitting upriver from the blood, you can kind of like watch some of your wounds and can chat to them. They would introduce themselves, Selafarn, Halbarad, and Turgon, three Dunedain warriors who, you know, have been out patrolling for the best part of a month, and they recently encountered this band and have been running and fleeing from them since, trying not to lead them back to any of their strongholds, but to outrun them. But it never happened. The Ward King found their scent every time.
Sin will look up from burying his axe deep into Narkor again in the hopes they wouldn't do that again.
Yeah, this sort of greenish light would go out from its eyes.
So yeah, he probably leaves his axe, Gimli style, buried into this thing, and introduces himself. You fought bravely. I'm glad you heard our horn.
It's the sweetest sound I've ever heard in my life.
That is something that has not been said often about our arrival. But, could do to hear it more.
We thought ourselves dead, a certainty. Your arrival couldn't have been better timed.
Farah says we should probably move and make camp some distance from here, but on the way maybe you could tell us of this region and the troubles you have seen.
Of course.
If your friends still live, we may yet find them.
His face kind of darkens for a moment. They do not.
Sin kind of gives him a look. I'm sorry to hear that. We've all lost people in this fight.
Too many, and too frequently.
Right. And he kind of like puts a reassuring hand on the guy's shoulder. We head towards the mountains, and he probably points in the direction. Maybe you can see their peaks some way off. Is that where you hail from?
We are patrolmen from Anuminas. We go ranging for months at a time.
Did you reach the mountains, or were you turned back?
Well, we got to Dorney's Bridge. We never crossed there. That old... And he, like, trails off. That old dwarf is a greedy sort.
Faroth is wincing as he's trying to clean the vast wound. It looks like a shark bite that you see on Shark Week, you know, like the crescent shape that moves all around the shoulder there. And he's wincing as he's sort of cleaning the wound as best he can. And he says, I've ranged around these parts. I've never encountered a dwarf on a bridge, you say?
If you want to get it to the Blue Mountains, there's a... Well, there's but one bridge. old and stout, fashioned by dwarves. And there's an old dwarf that lives there, Dorney. And he has lived there a long time, and his father before him, and they charge a toll.
They will not charge us.
Celephorn like laughs and like hits you on the other shoulder, not the painful one. He says, I don't know who you think you are, but there's no creature nor king on earth that Dorney would not charge.
A dwarf, though.
Certainly. Someone has to pay for reparations of his bridge, as he will proudly tell you again and again.
Varotha looks sort of half absent-mindedly down to his one of his satchel things that hangs from his equipment. It would likely have been soaked, but hopefully Varotha had enough presence of mind to wrap Nar's letter in a safe place. A letter that will hopefully put them in better stead with the dwarves than had they not have it. And he remains hopeful. But then again, dwarves, greed, you know.
He's not a bad sort, Dorney. He's just old and stubborn and a dwarf. And it's his understanding that anyone who wishes to pass into Ered Luin and the domain of the 3 dwarven holds there must pay a toll. He's a firebeard. You would do well to remember that. He's definitely not one of Thorin's folk, nor is he a broadbeam.
I see. Vareth feels almost ashamed. He wished, and there's a pang of pain that hits him in the chest, wishing that he had learned more of these people from Nar. For all those months that he'd been in their company, he suddenly feels yet another pang of guilt, and he looks down. And he looks across to both Bord and the hunter, and he says, "Have you wandered these paths? Do you know anything of these firebeards, these dwarves that might be useful?"
Bord looks directly to the hunter.
Would have I had any dealings with them this far out?
I don't think this far west. You might have had dealings with the dwarves in the east, like with the Iron Hills, maybe, or
Right.
But I don't, or maybe even Moria back in the day. But I don't think you probably haven't crossed this part of the world before, I would think.
Yeah, so as he's kind of bandaging himself up, he'll give a slight shake of his head and say, "I've not traveled this far out west."
Bord says, "But still, dwarves can't be trusted. These men are wise to warn us."
Some can, Bord. Some can.
Bord begins to speak, but stops himself.
Cynric sees that and says, "And we have to hope all of them can be, or at least more."
There are 3 dwarven holds in the Blue Mountains. Celephorn says, "Yeah, there's Nogrod, there's Belagost, and Thorin's Halls. 3 different holds. I don't know which dwarves you wish to speak to, or why even. But there are 3 holds, and they are dwarves. They are rivals."
And Faroth, again, that pang of guilt, wishing he'd known more about these people before setting out. So they have no central body, no one dwarf that gives the orders. They are 3.
Imagine it as 3 different cities: Edoras, Minas Tirith, and Minas Ithil.
I see. But they take orders from the steward. Do the dwarves have such a leader?
Do they? And he sees that you're not laughing, and then kind of like his face kind of goes serious again. I don't know. Two exactly. There's a King Dane in the Iron Hills. And I know that Thorin's grandfather was once king under the mountain, but the mountain is not their kingdom anymore.
So we hear. Still, we will cross that bridge well. And then Varel stops. Looks to the others.
If Dorney lets you, he finishes.
Yeah, yes.
Beregond all this time has been trying to scrape the sort of fat and the flesh from the warg pelt that he has, but he clearly doesn't know what he's doing, and he's making a hash of it.
Seeing that, the hunter would move over and raise a brow as he crouches down and says, "Would you like some help?"
No, I can manage. I can manage. I think. Just show me how you do this bit. But no, he's quite happy to hand over, or let you show him how to do it.
While they
So
work
then
on...
he would give you pointers and tips, and if there were some parts that you had done wrong, he would show you the right way to do it.
Great. So yes, he'd get her on with curing the preparing the hide so it doesn't go off.
Celefarn would say we should begin our travels back to Anuminas. We have much to report. It's not usual for bands this large to raid these lands and so openly challenge us. Plus, we have many dead that we need to say farewell to. Thank you again for your immaculate timing and for saving our lives. We'll not forget it.
Varel gives a curt nod, and then he looks over to the carcass of the War King, and he looks to his friends and he says, "Will the head of this beast serve us better or our friends?"
I mean, it's very large to carry around. I was probably going to get bored here to leave it as a standard at the crossing of this stream as a warning, but maybe it will earn you a vote or two back in the Numenous. Progress already.
Perhaps, but I felt more that if our ranger friends were to bear this head, then perhaps further packs would think twice about ambushing them. I don't know.
Maybe so. And if they manage to make it to Anuminas, and he kind of looks at them, I'm sure you will. Perhaps you could deliver it to the doorstep of one Fardred with a thank you note on it.
Barely suppresses a grin.
You mentioned Fardred, and they all kind of like, if we must. Any service we can do to you would not be enough to repay you.
Just 1 second before you go, and he walks back over to the wolf, and his axe is, I don't know, a fair-sized hand axe, and he pulls it out of the beast. He uses the handle and just knocks one of the large canine teeth out of it. Probably messy like a shark. There's just teeth everywhere. But he knocks the largest one he can see out of the beast to keep from himself, and he flicks it up into the air and catches it and pockets it, and then holds the axe that survived the Witch King, to board. Do you mind if you do the honors and behead the beast?
Bord will grab his axe and he will walk over to you, Cynric, and he holds it out towards you, actually, and he shakes his head and just says, "Wouldn't be proper." But he does hold out the axe, as that is the proper weapon.
Okay. Cynric puts back his olive branch in the form of an axe, hooks it back on his belt, and hefts the wild man, the Beorning's huge axe. And Cynric is quite strong, but I'm sure he struggles a little, but quickly gains his footing and moves the axe around on the ground behind him and lines up with the beast's neck, and then flips it up and over his head and brings it down.
Yep, it takes maybe 1, 2, thick, muscly neck on this warg king. Its head is almost the size of your own torso, maybe. It's enormous, and it's continue like hacking until finally you manage to cut through, and the head just like the long tongue kind of like lolls out through some of the teeth.
And Bord nods, and a smile creases his face as he holds his hand out.
Sin, possibly a little more covered in blood than he was before, holds it back to your large hand. Thank you, my friend.
And he embraces you together in your black blood.
Engulfed by the giant man's hug, he probably would squeeze out the words, "It would have taken longer with my hand axe."
We all wanted to see you do it.
And he kind of embraces him back for a second, trying to, whatever he can get his arms around. Probably not that far. And when he's free, he beckons to the Dunedain. "Your prize awaits. See that those of the council get a good eyeful."
They kind of wrinkle their noses in disgust at the huge warg head, but put it into one of their or onto the back of one of their horses and tie it down and begin to make their way back towards Numinas, and they kind of wave you goodbye and they thank you again. Yep, and then you can probably make some camp for the evening to try and recover from the exhaustion.
I presume a little distance from where we fought the battle.
Yes, I would say upriver, a little bit upstream, somewhere where the water is clear and clean. And you can rest easy that night. There's no horns, no howls, no nothing in the night. And the next day dawns clear and sunny even, which is unusual for this part of the world. There's like a nice sort of warmth from the sun as you walk now at this stage, actually. I think Baragon's horse is still okay, and Bord's horse are both fine, but the rest of you, and obviously Ciara, but the other two horses were felled. So you can kind of like take turns or whatever it is and make your way towards the Blue Mountains. At the end of your second day, just as evening is falling, you've been walking along the Luin River all day trying to find a place to ford, but there's not one. It's quite a steep sort of drip or drop down to this river, and it's a fast flowing river. And eventually then that evening, after a full day of walking looking for a place to ford a bridge, you finally see this bridge that they had talked about. Now they had talked it up. It's a wooden bridge, and it spans maybe 50 or so feet across this river. It's very sturdy wooden bridge. It looks definitely of dwarven make. All the planks are very, very thick logs, things like that. And on one side of it, the other side from where you are, there's a small house. And as you kind of like the first sort of clip clops of horses on the wood, this dwarf comes out of the house. He is old, for a dwarf even old. He's got white hair and a white beard. He's got one eye, and he's got this pipe. He takes a big sort of puff of smoke and seems to chew on the smoke as he kind of breathes it out. You there! You'll be wanting to cross, manling? He just shouts manling.
We are looking for Nogrod and Belagost. Are we on the right path?
You are. They're beyond. And he points vaguely in the direction of two different peaks. Nogrod, Belagost, Thorin's Halls.
As I understand it, you're a toll master, Master Dwarf.
I am.
I've been thinking, curious on my journey here. And please do not take this as a threat. We mean no harm, but how is it that one dwarf can enforce such a toll?
He chews on the smoke a little bit more. I'm stern.
Faroth chokes on his pipe he's smoking. Indeed. Well,
Nary an orc nor warg, no nothing else has ever crossed this bridge without my say-so.
well, we are familiar with the stubbornness of dwarfs. We had and Varus about to say something that he stops and he remembers.
And what is your toll for a party of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5?
It's a gold piece each.
A gold?
Yes. You're entering into dwarf lands. Want to trade with dwarves? Want to meet our kin? Then you'll pay for the pleasure.
Varus looks down and he says, Master Dwarf, we are here on a mission of vital importance, one that threatens all realms, including yours.
Let me stop you there, manling. There's nothing that you can say. Nothing that will sway me from this. Kings have crossed this bridge and paid the toll, and you are not king from what I can tell. You are a man. You'll pay the toll, as did Dane Ironfoot, as did Thorin when he first crossed. I have been here at this bridge for nearly 200 years, and my father was here before me, and his father, and all the way back. If you don't like it, you can keep riding and see if you can find another bridge. Good luck with that.
I don't believe that would be necessary, Master Dwarf.
Then pay the darn toll. I've had just about enough of your belly aching.
And
I
Varus
serve Thane Firebeard, and he has said that any who cross into these lands will provide a gold piece. Now, if you have a problem with that, you can pay me the gold and bring it up with the Thane.
Can I pay in
Varus
silver?
This is my bridge, and you have to pay me.
Varus
Can I
goes and
pay
looks at
the
his
equivalent in
belongings, yeah.
silver?
Hard-headed manlings, have I not made it clear? A golden piece each.
We carry only silver, Dwarf. Will you not accept this?
Takes another big drag on his pipe and this big cloud of smoke.
Or would you have us ride leagues for the change?
It's gold that Thane Firebeard has asked for the toll. It has always been gold, a golden piece. Is it hard to understand?
And Varus just stops himself and says, friends, I believe we should have a conference away from prying ears for a moment. And he walks a little bit away, sort of jerking his head for the rest of them to follow.
I'll be here.
I'm sure you will. Friends, this has been something we have not ever faced before. And I say now that I bear only silver. I have no gold on my person. What of you?
I have no gold, and he'll lift a small pouch, and there'll just be a jangle of a couple of coins. I barely have silver.
I have roughly a dozen silver. Gold is not really the currency of man. There is little of it to go around.
I had a gold piece that Nar left me, but I seem to have lost it, I say, looking through my pouch.
Farreth looks at Board.
Board here has, Lloyd, noble heavy mail. Does that mean it's heavy mail that's like of a, I don't know, a prestigious class or something that's a little bit more?
Yeah, it's like a chieftain's mail. You know?
Okay, cool.
It's
I
made.
was okay, excellent. So would it be something that might be made by Thranduil's people for me to symbolize kind of the alliance between that one of the many
Exactly. Yep.
ties? Okay, excellent. Would it happen to have gold on it?
It would have gold inlay and stuff. Yes.
Board breathes heavily and deeply, the rumblings of a sigh emanating from his lips, and he begins to remove the elven mail, or the mail from his body that was gifted to him symbolically from Thranduil himself, and he places it at the feet of everybody, and as an offering. Perhaps that will get us through.
Farreth puts a hand up and says, "No, Board, there must be another way. Beragond."
Oh, I found the gold coin, I say.
The gold coin gifted to you from your dead friend. Take my armor. It means nothing to me.
I am not so swayed by gold that I will miss it. Admitted it is a memory of Nar, but you should know my memory is carried in my heart, not in my belt pouch, I say. But I'm turning the gold coin over and in my hand, and it's gripping it quite tightly.
Board will reach out as you are kind of holding it out, but he pressures your hand and balls it into a fist around it even more tightly, and he says, "Your friend is leagues more important than the one who gave me this vest." And he says it, and he means well, but he says it with bright red cheeks, because he has insulted dwarves in the near recent past.
And as you do that, Beragond winces as you crush his hand in your huge hand.
There might be another way.
I have given you the way, and if that is my key to see the sea and touch it, and to stand in its shallow depths, let us make it so.
We need you protected. Without that armor, you would be dead. You need it. Our plight is not going to be stopped by one stubborn dwarf on a bridge. What we are doing is far more important. That dwarf, he must have been paid gold before. Beragond, do you believe that you might be able to find where he is stored said gold without him knowing?
I have a nose for finding things.
I know. And Farrell smiles. He isn't comfortable with the idea of stooping to thievery, but needs must. Board needs his armor. So
that armor, by the way, was like dressed up so much from what it actually is. Like it's good armor, don't get me wrong, but it's not like +9 gifted from Thranduil super duper armor. But thank you, I appreciate it, Rob.
I have a feeling the dwarf would not take your armor. It is not. Well, it may be partly gold, but it is not coin-shaped. He seems quite specific on the details. Though quite the gesture, my large friend.
He nods and he says, "If only one had warned us about the greediness of dwarves." And his cheeks flush red yet again.
Unfortunately, they have an appetite for gold, and we have very little of that to give.
Baragon rides back to the bridge and says, we only have enough gold for one to pass. It seems that I must go on the mission on my own. I said to Durney.
And the coin?
And I pass him the golden crest of our Erebor.
I think he takes it and says, "Right, good." And then he like goes to do this, and then he like looks at it. How came you by this?
Nar Ironfoot, comrade in arms, and the greatest fighter I have ever seen, gave it to me as a present. We have traveled far together. He enjoyed my.
Sorry, go ahead.
He said he enjoyed my stories, and he said a storied coin from the Dragon's Hoard would be a fitting gift for me.
He gets this look in his eye, like he's not sure if you know the value of this coin. And there's like this hint of a smile at the corner of his mouth. Well, you said a gold coin, and you've paid one. On your way.
So, as soon as I'm past, I'll find a place to hide and watch what he does with the gold coin.
So he's still standing outside. He's like looking at the coin longingly, the same way that you did when you first held it. There's like this natural sort of glow from the coin that like covers his face. He's like looking at it almost lovingly for a long time. And occasionally he'll like look up and see that your friends are still across the bridge from him and just make sure that they haven't crossed, and then look back down at it. He remains standing outside just to make sure they're not crossing while he's inside.
Faroth is not a performer. So he makes a very deliberate statement along the lines of, "Well, friends, we cannot go any further this day. Baragon must take this journey on his own shoulders. We must fall back into lands more known. Come, friends." And he starts walking away.
He like watches with like a beady eye, and then like eventually decides that you are leaving, and then walks back into his little house and sits there.
Baragon, as he goes back in, Baragon sneaks round and if there's any, and goes up to the chimney if there's a chimney, and sort of sees if he can see down the chimney or the smokestack into the house, or some kind of crack or some way in, to see what he does.
There's windows along the ground floor that you could kind of look into. There is smoke coming from the chimney, so you wouldn't be able to look down. The fire's
Okay.
obviously lit.
Yeah,
but you could look in through some of the windows if you wish.
Yep.
So looking in, you can see that this is a very defensible house. Like the front door leads to a secondary door that's like very heavy and stone. The walls are stone, although covered on the outside with wood to give the appearance that it's not, that it's just like some lowly house. and inside it is spotlessly clean. He has a very, very simple setup. He's got like a kitchen with the fire and things like that. And then he has like a little area where he there are many books and a sort of well-worn armchair. And in front of that armchair, like open, is this big chest of gold coins, which are neatly stacked on top of each other. There's maybe 15 in there, neatly stacked into piles of 5. And he is standing kind of in the kitchen area. He's like looking at this coin. It's much bigger than the coins he has in there. He like places it down for a moment and begins to like restock his pipe.
Has he? I presume he's closed the door after him. And
Yes. How far are you guys walking? Are you really making it look like you're leaving?
Yeah, well, Faroth knows how to go with being unseen. So I think as long as we can get to some kind of ridge where we can sort of drop out of line of sight, but he is talking to the others whilst they go, and he's like, what do you think we should do?
Judging by that size of the house, it's like a cottage for a dwarf. Like, there's not a lot of room to hide. No basements and attics and the like. It's just like one story.
Yes. Yep, it's little.
Okay. Sinurg says, I don't think there is any room for Beragond in there with a dwarf inside. I think we have to act as distraction if this is the path you wish to take.
We could always wait till he's asleep and barricade his door from the outside. Says Faroth with a rather mean smile.
Knowing that dwarf, he probably barely ever sleeps.
You wait till Beragond gives a signal, perhaps.
You can see Beragond that he like takes the coin and puts it into the chest, starting a new pile, and then he like closes the chest and makes his way back outside. He like moves to the door quietly for a dwarf, and like stands at the front door before like opening it suddenly as if to catch them as they cross the bridge, and then realizes they're not there. And he like stands outside looking over the bridge for a while, like looking with his one eye into the distance, trying to see if he can see them.
is he standing in the door?
No, he's out the front.
Then I'm pretty confident I can move silently. I'll just watch him for a while, see how long he watches, and if he doesn't look back to the house frequently, I'll just wait until he glances back to the house, and then I'll try and just walk in.
Yeah. So you watch for a little bit. He comes back in for a second, looks around, goes back outside, and like sits in this sort of rocking chair at the front, and he like lights his pipe again and kind of like watches over the distance, seeing if he can see those treacherous manlings.
So, and as he's sitting in his, as he's creaking in his chair, each time the chair squeaks, I take one step forwards, and walking smoothly until I get into the house.
Okay. Could you give me a stealth, please?
Yep. Oh, 11. I rolled a 1.
Now you are dealing with an old one-eyed dwarf, so his perception isn't as good as it could be, but we'll see how it goes. Okay. no sign of him turning around, or you don't hear the squeaking of the chair stop. Seems he hasn't noticed.
Okay. So am I in the cottage now?
Yes.
I'll go to his chest and take back my oh, this isn't going to work in a way.
No. As a character don't know, but as a player notice the flaw in the plan.
Immediate. I take out the coins that are on top, and then I check for a false bottom.
You can have inspiration, and you can find one.
And are there gold coins in the bottom?
There are indeed. It is filled with these similar 5 stacked stacks of golden coins, perfectly neat underneath.
So yes, I take 4 coin. I take 4 coins. How many silver to a gold?
I'm actually not sure. I don't think it's the convenient 10. I think it's more than that in Middle Earth. I would think that like a gold coin is worth a lot more than a silver coin in Middle Earth.
I'm just looking for the relative thickness.
Yeah, I guess that's what it's about. I would say that thickness-wise, silver coins are not too different from gold coins.
Yep, I'll take. I'll replace 5 silver with 5 gold with 5 silver, and then replace the false bottom to the chest. Put the other coins on top. Oh. I'll spread out the silver so they're on the bottom. Hopefully he won't find them or notice them in the next few weeks, but I don't know how often he counts and how thoroughly he counts. And then once I've replaced everything, I'll try and sneak out.
Okay. Yeah, it goes without issue. This old fart is like out the front, and if you could see him, he's like literally just like giving the stink eye towards the bridge, waiting for them to come back in the hopes that he can shout at them again. Obviously, he loves his job. He adores it. It is his life's work. And you can sneak out the window again with the golden coins and make your way back to your horse. And he continues sitting outside.
How wide is the how wide is the how deep and how wide is this chasm?
So it goes down probably 40, maybe 50 feet. This particular area, the river itself is maybe 50 across, or the bridge is 50 across. Sorry, there is kind of like a little outcropping that makes this a natural place to build a bridge. You know, it's closer than the rest of the area.
Okay, I climb down. I use the cloak of Thranduil to climb down. And does spider climb allow you to climb the underneath of surfaces? I can't remember.
Yes, you basically stick to whatever surface you're on.
Yeah. So I climb across the underneath of the bridge to the other side and go to join my companions, find my companions, and give them a gold coin each.
Okay.
And say, I'll meet them. Give me 10 minutes. Give me 20 minutes to get back onto the other side, and then join me.
No problem. So now armed with 4 coins of gold.
That's a lovely image, by the way. You trading across like the slats underneath as the river thunders below.
Faroth is overjoyed. He shakes Varagon by the shoulder like, yes, this is going to work. He's so happy.
There's a look of real sadness on Baragon's face, or pain.
Come, Varagon, he's going to get it back.
Perhaps the dwarves will welcome us once we've done our usual tricks. Maybe you can pay him on the way out.
Mm.
Come on.
Bord looks intensely surprised, and he has a huge smile on his face. He's very, very pleased with Baragon's actions, and you can see that all over him.
So Baragon just reverses his. He climbs the underside of the bridge and sneaks around to beyond the cottage where he left his horse and waits for his companions there.
Okay.
Oh, Master Dwarf.
What?
I have to confess, we have been woefully clumsy this day.
Not surprising.
No, not at all. The journey has been long and arduous, and it has addled our minds. We have discovered that we had a small cache of coins on our person, and he looks over to Cynric accusingly, as if like Cynric had kept some gold behind and not told them.
Cynric looks surprised and hurt, and it's a real reaction. Rather than a fake one. Suddenly shocked.
But we now each bear a gold coin for your coffers. Take it with our gratitude, and thank you for your warm welcome to your kingdom.
Let's see.
By all means, Faroth hands it over.
So he takes each one, he like looks at them, and he's like, He's like looking at each coin, and then he like puts them into a pouch by his side. Well, you've paid. Very good. Would you like to eat? You're more than welcome.
Oh.
Like the demeanor changes entirely. Once you've paid the gold, he's like, fine with you.
Oh.
Faroth looks to his friends, and his stomach does rumble.
I'm afraid, Master Dwarf, we have the most pressing business, as we tried to discuss before. Perhaps we shall eat when we return.
All right. I suppose it's a bit lonely out here.
There will be a lot more lonely people in the world if we do not get the news that we hold where we need to tell it.
Well, I suppose sounds important. Now, are you looking to get to the Firebeards or Thorin or the Broadbeams?
Forgive us. We are not entirely knowledgeable of your fine culture. We're not all from this far west. Do they all have their own Thane or king? Or is there one who rules over all of the Blue Mountains?
It's more like a council, I suppose you would call it. Although each hold has its own Thane. Obviously, the most important of which is Thane Firebeard.
Without a doubt. Would they be the closest hold to visit?
Yes, if you, he like points and gives vague directions in the direction of one of these peaks. He says if you go along this road, you follow it west, you'll see the great peak and the statue. You'll find your way then to Belagost.
Belagost it is.
I thought it was Nogrod. Sorry, the meta.
Oh, go ahead.
To whichever keep is the correct one.
Yes.
If we were to visit the others, just we stay on this side of the river and head north or south, respectively?
Yes, they're all on this side of the river in the mountains. The Firebeard is closest to here. If you were to go further north along the mountains, you would find the broad beams, and then further still you would find Thorin's holes.
Excellent. You do a fine job.
I know.
And he kind of like puts up his fists a little bit, like puts up his dukes. You keep all those orcs and wargs off our tails, and we will thank you dearly.
Always have, always will. Pleasant journey.
Master Dwarf, before we go, I feel sorry about our interchange before. Here, and he passes him a small pouch. Farath has actually taken some of his pipeweed. This is old buckleaf. It is only rivaled by the kind that grows in the Shire. Keep company instead.
Like raises an eyebrow of his one good eye, and like reaches out, a princely gift. Pleasant journey then.
Thank you.
And so you go past this poor dwarf Dorney, who you have robbed and given his own gold back to, and you make your way along the paths here. You find them safe. These are dwarf patrolled lands. No orcs would dare. And you make your way towards the Blue Mountains. You can make your way up a staircase that is carved neatly and angularly into the side of this mountain. Up for several hours until you see this statue they talked about, this giant statue of a dwarf carved into the side of the mountain. Bigger than any statue you've seen, except perhaps the Argonath. And you'll come to a gatehouse where you'll be challenged and asked who wishes to enter the realm of Thane Firebeard, and we can get to that next session. So thank you if you watched. I hope you enjoyed, and thank you to my wonderful players. I hope you had a good time. And I'm going to end the broadcast. See you guys later.